Good evening and welcome to tonight's Providence School Board meeting. Calling tonight's meeting to order. Let's begin with Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is the roll call. Mr. Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. President. President Thomas.
Present.
Vice President Garcia.
Present.
Secretary Dr. Santel.
Present.
Member Mr. Escobar.
He is present.
Mr. Escobar is here
Okay.
and is present.
Okay. Member Dr. Goldberg.
Present.
Member Mr. Aldiemi. Mr. Aldiemi is absent. Mr. Nunez. Mr. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Muhingaba.
Present.
We are all present. We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next on the agenda is the Superintendent's Comments.
Good evening, everyone. When we met last month, PPSD was heading towards the February vacation. I laid out our strategies for making sure that the students and the staff could return to school safely. Tonight, I am proud to report the strategy was responding. It was successful. We provided the rapid test kits to every student and staff members to use before returning from break. That allowed us to greatly limit the number of positive cases into school buildings during our staggered return. In fact, we had just 10 positive during our return week across the district of more than almost 20,000 students. On top of testing, we have continued to make vaccines available to our community through several clinics staffed with interpreters. And just last night, we partnered with the United Way and hosted a live 211 call center where people could talk directly with bilingual doctors to answer any questions our families have about COVID-19 and vaccines. Another layer of our COVID response has been masking. But with the district's number of positive cases at lowest point in this school year and vaccine rates rising, it is time to discuss the district mask mandates. Over the next few weeks, I'll be engaging with students, families, staff, medical experts, and other stakeholders to determine our path forward with masks. But please note that this is not a decision I will make lightly. And gathering feedback from everyone is a top priority. Of course, masks are just one of the ways that the pandemic has changed our schools and our lives. It's impossible to overstate how much COVID has impacted our education. Or as a Boston Globe columnist, Marquis wrote recently, quote, anyone who discounts the effect of the virus has had on learning is either not paying attention or is deliberately misleading you to fit their own narrative, end quote. I say this because, like everything else, the pandemic has had a huge impact on the turnaround action plan. So PPSD has worked with RIDE on the plan to adapt and overcome these challenges. Tonight, we'll share with you the path that we have charted forward and the areas we're focusing on to reach our goals. I look forward to discussing this strategy with the board and our community members here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next on the agenda is a approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
Motion's been made by Mr. Escobar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Stevens as well as Mr. Mahingaboo. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is recognitions, and we are doing PPSD cares. So, school culture is hard to quantify. It's that feeling of being welcomed when you walk through the doors in the morning, or being recognized for the hard work, or being accepted and valued for who you are. How do you measure that? There's no simple answer. But one indicator is telling, and that is teacher attendance. Today we recognize 360 High School for building a positive school culture where people come to work every day. 360 has demonstrated the highest teacher attendance rates of any single school in the district. Maintaining teacher attendance rates of more than 92% is doable during the school year. But doing so during the pandemic deserves some extra recognition. Tonight, we are giving a special PPSD Cares Award to Principal Kerry Tuttleby, Assistant Principal Rich Norris, and every educator and staff member at 360 High School for coming together and making your school a great place to work and learn. Could we have Principal Tuttleby and Vice Principal Norris please come forward?
Congratulations. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for your work. Appreciate it.
Can we get it? Oh,
You want to get a photo?
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Oh, yes, I plan to come by. Absolutely.
Keep smiling. I gotta get my phone out. There you go. That's great. Even with the mask. You see you're smiling.
Can't smile through the mask, so we try.
That's right.
Have a good one. Thank you so much, folks. You got it.
Okay, next on the agenda is public comment, right to be heard. So before we begin this evening with public comments, I want to say a few things. Typically, in public comment, those who sign up are allotted 3 minutes for public comment. Given the turnout tonight, I'm going to forego the 3 minutes that are allotted for folks to speak and ask those who have signed up to speak to come up and do so. However, I want you to be mindful of others that have already signed up to speak as well. We are here tonight to listen to your concerns. And if you have any questions, when you come forward, if you leave your contact information with Ms. LaSalle, the superintendent and I will make sure that the appropriate staff person returns your call and answers any questions that you may have. Okay?
President Thomas, should we have the suspending the 2 minute rule? Is that something that we should do a motion or second on?
So we don't need, yep, so I checked in with Mr. Ruggiero, and we don't need to take a motion to suspend.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we're going to get started with public comment. First on our list is Ms. Marquis Brown.
Thank you for having me on tonight.
Ms. Brown, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Please begin when you're ready.
My name is Marquis Brown Jones. I'm the wife of Pastor Sherrod Jones of Restoration Church in Providence. I'm a parent of a PPSD student, community advocate, and was a senior community specialist at Nievel Bishop. I was also a secretary for 6 years with the school department before I was hired for this position. But because of being on probation, I was terminated due to an evaluation that I received that I did not know about, nor was I able to discuss in detail. When I say I believe I was terminated due to the results of a pre-disciplinary meeting, because I haven't received any feedback on why it was, only from a gentleman that was not on the Zoom, which his name, I believe, was Mr. Scott, who said it was because of your probation. My time with Nathan Bishop, I served as a mediator between faculty and students, and parents with students, like the PBIS says that we care, and I've done all of that. A lot of administrative duties, including breaking up numerous fights and behavior issues in classrooms, which is part of the responsibilities, but not solely. So many issues that I was not even able to do any training of my own, though, because there were so many issues inside of the school. I fed families, and because of my connection to community, there was a student that went missing. They saw Nathan Bishop. They immediately got in contact with me. I immediately, after my termination, got in touch with my ex-boss who I worked for and said, hey, I'll let you know, I may be able to find out some information for you. So again, as I was terminated, I still did my community things because I'm connected with the community. Found the young lady, and also let them know where she was found in the mall. Thank God for that. She wasn't missing, she just was hanging around. So I was treated unfairly. And I know we care, and because I worked at that school, that's what I did automatically. And she would even mention, we got money for the school to get more community specialists to take out the people that we don't need. So at that moment, I felt, kind of like I took it personal. And the students, when they found out that I was terminated, they actually did a protest. And 4 of the students got suspended because of the people that I know. They let me know, and they saw that and sent me the email where it said they were the ringleaders, so they got suspended. So the reason why I'm here tonight is just to make sure that the superintendent, the school board, and everybody kind of goes with the situation of, as we care, that the people that they put in place, that you actually know who you put in place. 2 people hired me, but the person who didn't hire me fired me because she was new. I think being on probation for 6 months does not give enough opportunity for a person to grow or a person to make any mistakes. And I believe, again, like I said, I do not know why I was terminated, but I just came to speak upon that. And I thank you for your time where they can just, make sure our community is for our community. Been in the community for years. And my husband and I work together, and that's what my statement is for tonight. Thank you for having me.
Nice job. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Next on the list is Miss Anita Bruno. Ms. Bruno, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Providence School Board. Thank you for having us. What I want to say, I'm going to pause for one moment just because I did a walkthrough of Nathan Bishop when Marquis was there and employed there, and the students love her. I've seen it with my own eyes. They go to her for counseling, they go to her for advice, they go to her to calm down, they go to her when they have a problem. Even I've seen the teachers, actually I saw the teachers pulling her to the side and asking her for help with the students. So I think that should be definitely considered and spoken about. So why I'm here is the superintendent process. I would love to see the school board take a firm stand on having the commissioner post the superintendent vacancy, knowing that that is a very important position. I'm a carpenter, 15 years, so we build from the foundation up. Providence needs a strong foundation. The superintendent is the one that leads that foundation. So there has to be a community-involved vetting process. I would say community-led, but it should be community-involved 100% with the school board and the commission throughout the whole process, from the applications to the vetting, and then even further afterwards to hold them accountable to do what they're supposed to do. Knowing that Providence Public Schools was rated the worst in the nation, should have everybody doing everything they can to make sure that that turnaround is turning around. And then again, Chief of Equity, that position still has not been filled. And if we're talking about everything that we've been talking about for 400 years plus, equity should be very important. Also uplifting President Biden's executive order on diversity and equity in everything. So that should be one of your first initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bruno. Next, we have Ms. Lisa Nievel. Am I pronouncing your,
Yes, you did terrific.
take your time, no rush.
I'm impressed.
President Thomas, really quick, can we let like all of the people that are speaking, you can sit down, you don't have to stand up.
If you prefer to sit, you can sit. If you prefer to stand, you can stand whatever you feel comfortable speaking. Ms. Nievel, thank you for joining us. Please begin when you're ready.
Oh, thank you for having me. My name is Lisa Nievel. I've lived in Providence since 1977. My children and grandchildren have attended the Providence Public Schools. I'm very familiar with how they work. I really think it's important to have in place a permanent superintendent of the Providence Public Schools. The reason I'm concerned is that with an interim superintendent, there's no guarantee that any initiatives that are started will be followed through. There's no guarantee that that superintendent will even be in place. He may take one step to the left and be terminated. That's not okay. That's not leading to quality leadership. I'm really upset with the commissioner because when she's been questioned on this, what she said is, I have bigger things to worry about. We have COVID. And she just pushes it to the side as if it's a mosquito in her ear. It's not a mosquito in my ear. It's a crucial issue that needs to be addressed by the board. And we need to have community involvement in the selection. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nievel.
President Thomas, is there still a mask mandate in place in PBSD buildings?
There is, and so I know that there are some folks that are present here without a mask. We have masks available and strongly encourage those who are not wearing a mask to please do so. Next on our list is Evelyn Gillian. Is Ms. Gillian present? Okay, if Ms. Gillian is not here at this moment, if she appears, we will certainly ask her to come forward. Next on the list is a Melissa Hughes. Ms. Hughes, it's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Sorry, just 1 second.
No worries. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Melissa Hughes. I'm a parent of 2 students in Providence Public Schools. I also serve on the PTO at my school. I am on the school building committee, and I'm a member of the Parent Advisory Council, or PAC. On the PAC, I serve as the middle school leader. I wanted to speak to you tonight to share a little bit about what the PAC is and how parents are involved there and at their schools. We like to talk at the PAC, at the Parent Advisory Council, of thinking of our PAC members as the center of a bow tie. So if you imagine that the PAC member is at the center, that we are the knot, that we are bringing information from our schools. We communicate with our principal, with teachers. If there's a PTO or PTA at our school, we talk there. And we find out what are the major concerns at our school, what's going well, what's not, and then we bring that to our PAC meetings. When we come to our PAC meetings, then we meet with our superintendent, we meet with other district leaders and the commissioner as well. In those meetings, we have time to both ask questions and to get new information and to provide concrete feedback about how things are going from the parent and family perspective at our schools. PAC parents are volunteers. We are not compensated in any way for our time, but we do spend a lot of time trying to make sure that those connections are even stronger. One new exciting development, at least many schools, is that many schools now have a parent ambassador as well. That role is a little bit different, but both the parent ambassador and the PAC reps would communicate at the school level and serve in different ways. The PAC meetings are facilitated by the Family and Community Engagement Office team. They help us to collaborate and create the agenda for each meeting, but that is mostly led by the parent leaders of the PAC. So we are able to focus on topics that are most pressing and most concerning to parents. We put out a monthly survey to our members to ask them what is most pressing, and we also meet monthly as a leadership team to talk about what's come up at multiple meetings and what's most pressing. Recently, parents expressed a lot of concerns about social emotional health and mental health and well-being. We worked with the FACE office to get representatives from across the district at the elementary, middle, and high school level, guidance counselors, social workers, and other psychologists to meet with PAC parents directly and hear in more detail the concerns that we had. This was a really important way for parents to see that our feedback is being heard and that the district is taking us seriously. Beyond that, PAC has had a lot of influence in the way that the district communicates with families. I am really excited today to report that my family, for the first time, received a Kinbo message, a letter from Dr. Montañez, talking about some of the new COVID procedures, and that letter arrived to me in 7 different languages. This is the first time as a parent in PPSD for 9 years that I've seen communication that clear and that responsive to the many different families that are in our district. This is in direct response to parents at PAC and in other venues asking for this type of communication, and I want to commend Dr. Montañez and his team for making that a priority. The PAC has changed a little bit since the state takeover in Providence schools. Prior to the takeover, we met with only the superintendent. Now, as I mentioned, we also meet with the commissioner and her team and have the opportunity to speak directly with her about how parents see the takeover is going or not. Some of the biggest improvements we've seen are around those communication issues, specifically around COVID mitigation strategies and how that plays out in real time for families. And we've also seen better representation on PAC because that is part of the turnaround plan, is to see more representation from more schools across the district so that it isn't just a select few families with resources that come to that space. So finally, I would invite our school board members to reach out to Nick Figueroa, the Director of Family and Community Engagement, or that team if you'd like to learn more about PAC or if you'd like to come and observe a meeting. We've been meeting throughout the pandemic on Zoom. We have not stopped. We did not take a break. We do provide translation services as needed as well. And I also invite our school board members to reach out to the individual schools that you represent and are under your purview so that you can meet parents in real time. Ask to attend a PTO meeting, ask to meet with families, and you will hear even more information. I know there are a lot of folks in the audience today, and some of them might be families, but it's also really hard for families to be able to come to space like this on a weeknight when there isn't childcare or food or these other things, which PAC does provide when we meet in person. I just wanted to share that information about some of the great ways that our parents are engaging across the district and let you know that parents care, and we're so glad that you do too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Next, we have Ms. Cindy Robles. Ms. Robles, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Please
I
begin.
did jot down some notes because I don't want to keep you here forever if I don't, organize myself. You will be here forever.
Well, thank you for that.
Good evening, President Thomas and members of the Providence School Board. My name is Cindy Robles, and I'm the parent of a current Providence Public School student. I'm here today to express my support for more community input in the decision-making for PPSD, specifically the search for our new superintendent. The search for a new superintendent should be a clear, transparent process that involves both the community and the school board. We, the community, need your support in asking for that vacant position to be posted immediately
along with a timeline and plans for community involvement. We don't have time to waste. As a school board, you must continue to be accountable to the community that you serve. Help us build, create, and maintain an educational experience that all of our children need, want, and deserve. I look forward to working with you and the entire school board to make Providence a better place for our children. Thank you for their time, and thank you for your dedication to our kids.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Enrique Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez present. Okay, Mr. Sanchez arrives before the end of public comment. We will certainly circle back to him. Next on the list is a Mr. Raymond Watson. Mr. Watson is not here at the moment. He is here? Okay. Mr. Watson, thank you, sir. Your timing is perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Please begin when you're ready, sir.
Sure. So, first of all, greetings to everyone. See some familiar faces on the board. Unfortunately, I'm not here for a good conversation this evening. I'm here in particular to raise concerns about a situation that took place at Mount Pleasant a couple of months ago with one Jaywan Ian Watson, my younger cousin. Now, I'm sure everyone saw the video. I'm not so much concerned about the space up until the officer gets him into the safe space, surrounded by other staff, where he's not a threat, and then escalates force and slams my cousin to the floor. Now, when you do background on this officer, he's been responsible for 43 out of 50 student arrests at Mount Pleasant between 2017 and 2020. Now, in 2014, I led the revamp of the school code of conduct. So I know for certain and specifically that the spirit and intent of that code of conduct was to deter students from being involved in the legal system. So how is an officer who has 43 out of 50 arrests in SRO? I don't get it. And he's doing this with children. What does that do to the psyche or mentality of the children? Now, we can battle about the police, and I do that very often. But I'm here more concerned about the principal over there, Dr. Conrad. Because I don't understand how, if you know these numbers, why you still have that SRO over there. And if you watch the video, you see that Dr. Conrad, when he sees the officer escalate force, instead of doing what he's supposed to do in locus parenti, he instead escalates force with the officer by jumping on my cousin. Now, I just want to ask, for those of us who have children in this room, regardless of what your child does, right? How would you feel if an officer body slammed them and then the principal jumped on top of them after? You'd kind of be upset, wouldn't you? But I'll ask, I'm just gonna ask humbly, what is the school board said about it? What's been done about it? Dr. David Conrad, he can't stay there anymore.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
I
You
was
need to
asked
be
to
out of
come
my
and
place.
share. I think for those of you who know my background and my experience, Dr. David Conrad, he can't stay there anymore. So I'm asking you all to be leaders in this area, to do the right thing. You hear the community. I'm not speaking just my opinion, not just because it's my cousin. I care about all the kids in these communities. He does it. And we're asking you all to be leaders because in this city, for those of you who might be new to this, springtime is activist season. And I have no issue at all asking humbly if the community would focus their attention over at Mount Pleasant. So thank you all for your time this evening. Please continue the great work, and I'm sure I'll be seeing everyone soon.
Mr. Watson, thank you, sir. Next on our list is Miss Lisa Scorpio. Is Miss Scorpio present? Okay, Miss Scorpio appears. Before the duration of public comment, we will have her come up. Next is Miss Ramona Santos Torres. Ms. Torres, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Good evening, School Board President Kinsel Thomas and dear members of the school board. My name is Ramona Santos Torres. I am the Executive Director of Parents Leading for Educational Equity I am a proud member of the community design team member. I am also a proud member of the school building committee. I am also a proud member, a co-chair of the district-wide advisory council. So when I thought about what I wanted to share with you tonight, this is the first time I come here and provide public comments. I thought about reflecting on public comment that I provided on June 26, 2019, in regards to my experience as a community, as someone who went to a schools with the John Hopkins review team. So I'm going to read this, and now I quote. Good evening, distinguished members of the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, Commissioner Infante-Green, parents, and members of the community. My name is Ramona Santos Torres. I'm a parent of two amazing young ladies. One of them is a Providence Public School middle school student. I am a parent advocate and one of the co-founders of Hughes. I was part of the team that conducted site visits at the middle schools and high schools, and also helped facilitate some of the sessions for the community forum. The classrooms I visited were primarily ESL and special education, both inclusion and self-contained. Because of my experiences as a parent of a student with disabilities, having to fight very hard for my child to receive the most basic services, and because of my work and experience as an educational advocacy specialist for a nonprofit in Rhode Island, I thought I was ready to see what I saw. I thought that nothing would surprise me. I was on the far end of things will be bad spectrum, but I was worse. I was wrong. From day one, Monday, May 20th, it was evidence things were worse than expected. It didn't matter if you were a pessimist or an optimist. Very soon, one realized that it was going to be a very tough week. And by Thursday, May 23rd, in the afternoon, during my own interview as a parent, I broke down crying. I was not ready. I was not emotionally prepared to see children in the kinds of environments that I saw them. Please make no mistake, so many of our children of color are not learning. The educational environments in which our children spend many hours in are not conducive to learning or to nurture the amazing qualities they have. For instance, a classroom of 24 students, an amazing teacher trying to teach. He didn't have the resources that he needed. Kids, students, at very different levels of English proficiency and academic experience. How could this teacher provide support for them? I also saw in another school the students sharing a painful experience about a teacher who used inappropriate and racist language towards them. The pain that you could hear in their voices and see in their faces. That teacher should not be anywhere near our children. But she is, and she will return the next year to continue to terrorize our children. And that should haunt all of us. I saw buildings falling apart. I heard the plea of school administrators asking for more resources to help students with increasing and complex needs. I could talk for days about the things that I saw during this review, and I will, but for now, I just want to end my remarks by calling upon all adults to get it together and work non-stop until we create the educational environments our children deserve. It is our obligation to do whatever it takes, and we will. End quote. So that was 2019. These remarks were made almost 3 years ago. And a lot has happened since then, including a global pandemic. But it appears that we have forgotten the conditions, the dysfunction, those structures that were predating the state intervention. So it seems that we have forgotten what for decades have been well documented in reports, not just in the John Hopkins report, but we have a 1993 report that is called the Providence Blueprint for Education. I mean, how many more decades later will be the John Hopkins report, and it is practically the same things. So as we have this conversation about the future of Providence Public Schools, and if we start to think about giving up on the state intervention, my question to you is, and to all of us, including myself, as I reflect about what we are going to do, is what is the plan? What's the plan? If the turnaround plan is not it, the turnaround plan which was put together by community members, if we all of a sudden decide that that's not it, then what is the plan? Because going back to the same structures and the same dysfunction that got us to a state takeover in the first place, that's not it. So, real leadership holds itself, real leaders hold themselves accountable to the highest standard before they hold other people accountable. So we need leadership, but we need accountability for everyone, not just the few, not cherry picking. We are going to hold accountable, all of us. And I want to end my remarks addressing directly to Interim Superintendent Dr. Javier Montañez. I want you to know that the community sees you. We appreciate you. We value the work that you are doing. We value that you were called to serve and you are serving. Above the noise, you are serving. You could have chosen not to take up that position and you did. Because you care about Providence public school students, because you went through the system and you know what the system does, and you are serving. So I want you to hear that from parents and community members. We see you, we value you, and we appreciate the work that you do every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Next on the list is Ms. Bellanoka.
It's a village, I'm sorry.
No worries, take your time.
Can I sit here?
Please. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Please begin when you're ready.
My name is Bellanoka. I am a Narragansett tribal elder. I believe I earned the position. I have lived in and was born in Chad Brown, grew up on the east side and lived in Fox Point. I have a very large family. I am the seeds of this land. I come from the seeds of this land. This is my Aboriginal land. My ancestors are here, and I speak in spirit. I decode myself from all of the upbringings that were pushed and forced on my way of life, because it is not our way. We come from villages, and in villages, aunts and uncles and sisters, and everybody has a say in the upbringing of our children. And I think many of us forget where we come from, because I see a lot of villages out there, a lot of villages. And when it comes to our children, I don't believe any one person should be given the say as to who oversees what goes on with our children. It should come from community. It should come from the parents. It should come from the aunts and the sisters and the mothers and the grandparents. They have input. These are very old policies, procedures, and whatever is in place that never worked for us. It didn't work for me when I was in school. And they're still in place today. And all you're doing is taking up an old seat with new heads, new faces, and practicing ways that are broken. Your job is not to continue on in the old way. It's to find out what doesn't work and to fix it. It's to stand up for the underdog. It's to stand up for the child who doesn't have the parents in the home. It's to stand up for the poor little kids who are not being fed. It's to stand up against teachers who don't want to teach. It is to stand up against any injustice. So I believe when you give that kind of power to one person to hire someone who sits in such a noble position, there will be nothing but problems.
And anybody who sits in that position should humble themselves and leave it up to the people to decide. I was blown away sitting here today when I heard Raymond Watson speak about his little cousin that was thrown to the ground. And I looked and I really didn't see the emotions that I would expect to see when you hear about a child being mishandled in that way. It's like you're numb and unfeeling, and maybe too much social media and all of that stuff, and you're overly stimulated. Or maybe you've been in COVID, in quarantining so long that you forgot to feel. But you need to get back to your organic roots and find out who you are and what village you come from and where you belong, and start acting human again. I listened to Marquis. I've known that young girl. She's a woman today, but I've known her since she was a little girl. She just stands in light. I've never known her to step out of her light. The community looks up to her. They respect her voice. I live in South County right now, but this is all my land. And I don't, and I won't stay silent. I will speak up when called, and I was called last night to attendance to speak. Marquis, you are deserving of such greatness, and I do hope that you guys really investigate what's going on, because I cannot imagine her being let go for any reason. These kids look up to her, they depend, heck, I am an elder and I look up to her. I respect every single one of you, and your faces are like in my memory. But when a child, and I'm going to repeat this one more time, when you hear of a child being slammed to a ground and you don't show no human emotion, check your, what's the old saying? Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because something's not working inside of you. Thank you for having me, and I hope the commissioner leaves that decision up to the village. I hope.
Thank you, Mr. Olds. Next, for public comment is Samantha Kelly. Is Ms. Kelly present? Okay, if Ms. Kelly appears, before the end of public comment, we will have her join us. Next on our list is Mr. Chris Bull. Is Mr. Bull present? Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Thank you for holding this. President Thomas and members of the Providence School Board. My name is Chris Bull. I'm a Providence resident. I'm a Providence teacher. I teach physics across the street at PCTA. My daughter's in Providence Public Schools. My son will be next year. So just I'm invested in what's happening. I just want to echo, it's really the majority of comments tonight in terms of the situation about the superintendent. I also want to thank Dr. Matanias for his work. It's much appreciated. But as was noted, we need a permanent position. We need to fill this, and we need the village to help with this process. This process should include the school board pushing for the immediate posting of the position, as well as a blueprint for the timeline, plans for community involvement, how we can measure these things, non-negotiable timelines, and commitments. So we are aching clearly, as you've heard, to see a process that's more inclusive and that is very strict and laid out and understandable to everyone. I'd also like to talk, just like a little inside baseball for some of you, but a little bit about the PTSD grading policy as a teacher. At the moment, in Providence, you cannot get a 0. You cannot get a 0. You can get a 50 on assessments on quarter grades, but you cannot get a 0. And you cannot fail. You get an incomplete. Now, I want to make clear, I'm not sure the history of this policy. It may have come about out of good intentions at the height of the pandemic. We had students at home struggling with technology, and it might have made sense then, and I'm not going to argue that point, but it doesn't make sense anymore. Here's how absurdly this can work in real life. If a student shows up for the first quarter and gets an A, that's a 90 average for their first quarter, they can then stay home for quarters 2, 3, and 4. What should be zeros become 50s magically at grading time. And then we're averaging a 90 with 3 50s. And you can do the math if you want, but I've done it for you. 90 plus 150 is 240. Divide that by 4, that's an average of 60. That is a passing grade. And it works the other way. You could do nothing for the first 3 quarters and just plan on, and sadly some students do this, it's like, I'm really gonna get into gear, 4th quarter, and I'm gonna pass. Now, this is a disaster for a teacher trying to help my most struggling students. And let me explain that. I'm not talking about the majority of students. I'm talking about the toughest ones that just want to scrape by. They're just trying to graduate. They're just trying to get through the system, but they're often unwilling even to try. And there's a lot of history behind those reasons. I understand those reasons, but it's my job to try to help them and try to break them out of those patterns. These are our most vulnerable students, the ones with the least support, and they're the most likely to check out, and they're often the most likely to drop out, unfortunately. And sad to say, my best leverage to keep them on a path towards actual success, right? Not fake success through grade inflation, toward actual success, my best tool is consistency, structure, and honesty in the active danger and threat of their failure. That is sadly what they respond to often. Look, some work deserves a 50. A revision to that assignment might bring it up to a 60 and pass it. But meanwhile, a refusal by some students to do anything, to participate in any way, that deserves, it demands a 0. And the students who struggle for a 50 or a 60 or a 70 understand this more than anyone. No one is prouder than they are to get that passing grade. And it's an insult to them and to their dedication and their hard work, getting that 50, earning that 50 or that 60 or that 70. It's an insult to them to award anything other than a 0 to those who choose to do nothing. Because too many choose to do nothing, or the barest minimum, and their only hope of improvement is to call them out and give it a name. No effort, no participation, no collaboration, no conversation, that's a 0. That's what it looks like. It's what they earn, it's what they deserve, and it's that failure, that actual failure, on paper, in writing, that might push some of them to try harder, to engage, to eventually succeed in a meaningful way. We're perpetuating the opportunity myth by making kids think they have skills that they don't have. They think they passed, because it says it on a piece of paper, they did not pass, they should not have. This is done to inflate numbers and make things look good, when in some ways, sadly, it's never been worse. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Bo, thank you, and thank you for your service to our students. Next, we have Ms. Michelle Miller. Is Ms. Miller present? Ms. Miller, thank you for joining us. Please begin when you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Michelle Miller. I'm a lifelong Providence resident. I attended Providence schools and graduated from Hope High School in 1997. I was in the dance program. I'm a certified elementary teacher and served as an LTSP here in Providence from 2008 to 2005. I am here to speak against the continued mask mandate that is being imposed upon Providence school children. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the negative impacts of masking, like the cognitive issues, sleepiness, lack of verbal cues that young children rely on in learning to read, how the masks are restrictive and harmful. I do want to emphasize that the governor lifted an executive order that required all schools to be masked. So on February 9th, when Governor Marquis stated that he would be lifting the executive order on March 4th, I thought that the superintendent and the commissioner would follow the mandate, would follow in lifting the mandate for Providence school children, because the governor stated in a press conference that cases were down 94%. However, on February 11th, we parents received a letter from the superintendent where he and the commissioner were not consistent with the governor's message and instead stated that COVID was not taking a break. And although the executive order will end on March 4th, PPSD will be requiring masks beyond that point. And I was furious because I no longer wanted my 5-year-old daughter, Nina, in a mask. And with the warm spring months ahead, her eczema acts up on her face because of the heat, and a mask would only irritate her skin. They cited low vaccination rates as the reason for the continued masking. Now, I have several issues with this. Parents have the right to choose not to vaccinate their kids. I'm one of those parents. I lost my 5-year-old daughter to cancer 8 years ago, my firstborn, and I'm very uncomfortable with the cancer-causing chemicals in vaccines. Number 2, vaccination doesn't stop transmission according to the CDC. The Department of Health and the school department do not require the children to be vaccinated for COVID-19, and even if they did, parents are entitled to medical and religious exemptions by law. It's discriminatory. All except 2 districts have allowed masks to be optional, and those 2 districts are Providence and Central Falls. Warwick and Exeter West Greenwich have allowed masks to be optional regardless of vaccination status. I think it's biased. 90% of students in PPSD and Central Falls are Hispanic and African descent. Are we parents? Are we people of color incapable of making, informed decisions for our own children? CDC data shows there is a 99% survival rate for COVID. The Department of Health data shows no child under 24 has died. And from Rhode Island, Department of Health Director James McDonald stated that we are moving toward an endemic, and on April 1st, we'll no longer be in a state of emergency, yet our children are still masked. Here we are. What science are the superintendent and commissioner following? I emailed the superintendent, called his office, I emailed the commissioner, it's all fell on deaf ears, there's been no response. I don't think requiring masking beyond the end of an executive order is even legal. I mean, is it included in your dress code policies? Rhode Island general law states that each student, staff member, teacher, administrator have a right to attend or work in an institution of higher education, which is safe and secure. However, it also needs to be conducive to learning. Do you think that continued mask wearing of our children is conducive to learning? Because I don't. Breathing is essential, a very normal part of our being, vital to our survival, and yet the last 2 years, our children have been demonized for needing to do it. Our children have carried the burden of keeping our older generation safe when they should just be able to be kids and enjoy a normal learning experience at school. As a parent, I just want to be heard. I just want to be involved in the decision-making process, and I just want more integrity, transparency, and accountability in our school, from our school officials. Thank you.
Ms. Miller, thank you. It's a pleasure seeing you.
There's some folks in the back of the room that are having trouble hearing. If the speakers could just speak directly to the microphone, that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Goldberg. Next for public comment, we have Ms. Rosa Aguilar. Ms. Aguilar present?
Yes.
No, take your time. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Please begin when you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Rosa Aguilar, and I am here as a concerned parent and a member of the minority community. On top of the other problems that the Providence school has, I was just recently made aware that we are one of the only 2 districts that's still mandating masks on our kids. Given the fact that Providence is the most diverse city in Rhode Island, I find this decision very disgusting and discriminatory. I'm assuming I don't know if you guys are assuming the minorities are not able to make their own decisions, that you guys have to make it for them, or is this decision made on funding? Because clearly it's not about COVID. I don't want to hear about the vaccination rate because the science has shown this vaccination don't prevent transmission, right? It prevents symptoms. Not everybody is at risk for severe illness. Rhode Island Department of Health on their website states the people that have died, the age. Well, I don't see anybody under 24 years old there listed. So I'm still wondering, why are we forcing one of the most diverse cities in Rhode Island to wear a mask? So all these other districts, they are predominantly white, and I don't want to be raised into it because it's not it, but it is in this case. They're not being forced to wear a mask. So why are the Hispanic and the African American are being forced?
Absolutely.
I would like to know where is BLM and our superintendente, que es un hispano, why you guys are choosing to stay quiet on this? As a woman of color, I was not expecting or believing that in 2022, my kids were gonna face this discrimination. I mean, yeah, my stepmother called me. She doesn't speak a lot of English, and she called me to ask me about that. I was heartbroken. She had no idea that this was going on, and she speaks minimal English, so she was scared to speak up because the language barrier. And like her, there are a lot of parents that because of the language barrier, they are being taken advantage and they are being kept in the dark. I believe that we deserve the right to participate in this decision as the other white districts do. I don't understand why here in Providence, the diverse cities, we don't have a say. Why are we being deprived of this decision? Is there a reason that you guys can tell me why are we being deprived of participating? The other district did a poll and asked the parents, oh, what do you guys think? And based on that poll, on the parents' response, then they made a decision and made it optional. Why we minorities are not being the same right? Because everybody likes to say how oppressive all these things are. This is oppression right here. This is oppression. You guys don't tell the people that don't speak English what's going on.
Yes.
You guys don't give them the choice to say something about it or to even, I don't care whether you wear a mask, that's your choice, but it should be a choice. And you guys should involve the parents.
Yeah.
Like, what is this?
We always
Do
be
you guys,
left out.
any of you, like, have an answer of this? Y eso para los hispanos, que no hablan inglés, los hispanos. Pues si ustedes no lo sabían, Providence y Central Florida son la única ciudad que todavía están forzando a los niños a ponerse máscara. Todos los otros distritos donde la mayoría son blanquitos, la máscara es opcional. Entonces nosotros somos los únicos chocos que no tenemos voz y voto. Si ellos le dicen a ustedes que es por la vacuna, a esta altura del juego se sabe que la vacuna no previene infección, ayuda con síntomas. Y aquí en Rhode Island ningún niño todavía ha muerto de eso. Bueno, por lo que dice el Departamento de Salud. So that's why I came here, to figure out. I emailed the superintendent, I emailed Angelica, I emailed a bunch of people, nobody says a thing. All the diverse parents are emailing me on Facebook and asking me, like, come on, people. We are minorities, we're supposed to take care of each other. I see a lot of minorities here in this panel. I'm surprised. This is my first time I come one of these meetings. I thought I was gonna see not a lot of minorities because the way that we're being treated, I thought it was not minority. I see there's plenty here. Nobody's bats an eye. All the other white kids are, they wanna wear a mask, they can wear a mask. Us minority? Oh no. You gotta do what you're told. What is this? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aguilar. Next for public comment, we have Becky Destefano. Did I get your last name correct?
Destefano.
Destefano. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you for having me. It's actually a pretty good follow because my children went to school with no masks on today. Why? Because I had the choice as a parent, and Providence parents deserve the same choice. My name is Becky Destefano, and I'm the mother of 2 children in the East Providence school system. So why am I here? Well, I'm a mother, I'm a parent and child advocate, and I'm an outraged Rhode Island citizen. Outraged that the children of Providence are still being forced to wear masks for 7 hours a day when the majority of Rhode Island children do not, including my own. I could easily sit at home and be like, oh, my kids are fine, but every single child matters. It is reprehensible that the children right here in our city's capital are being put through this unnecessary abuse. We know why, and it is certainly not about health or safety. It never was. What is it about then? Control, power, discrimination against low-income and minority families, to coerce them into making life-changing decisions by using children as collateral. I have seen the massive campaign to get children vaccinated and holding them hostage in masks until they comply. There is very good reason that minority populations in Rhode Island are the least vaccinated for COVID-19. They do not trust the government, nor should they. The low numbers of vaccination are not due to lack of access or lack of knowledge. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Look at the history of how minority populations have been used as guinea pigs for medical experiments. The devastating birth control experiment on Puerto Rican women, and Tuskegee, where 600 African-American men were given syphilis and observed as they suffered and died for 40 years after they were given this horrible disease, even after a cure was discovered. So why would these communities now believe a tyrannical government has their best interests at heart? A government that is run by a governor who loves to parade around maskless while children are forced to wear masks 7 hours a day or more. They are being punished through their children by the government. We, the parents, make the decisions for our children. End of story. They are our children. They do not belong to the state or the administrators or bureaucrats or anybody in the education system. They belong to their parents and their families. I fought with my school district, and I will fight for any school district to get these kids and parents the choices that they deserve. We have a legal finding in a court of law right here in Providence. I am part of a lawsuit against the governor and the Department of Health over the mask mandates. And the finding is that masks do irreparable harm. It is a legal finding on file right now. Brown University, just down the road, published a study in November pointing to masks and other COVID measures causing harm to children. I'm pretty unclear on how you sleep, knowing that these kids are being harmed every single day and depriving of parents making the choices that are for their children. I'm unclear how you find the equity you preach about, because I see all those materials as well, when these children are being denied the rights while other children are not. It should be every child has the choice. Every parent has the choice. Every parent and every child matter. Anyone who has not stood against this is for it. It is that simple. You are complicit. We, the parents, will never stop advocating for all children and will hold any and all parties who intend to harm them accountable. And I will stand with any parent who wants to fight for their child. You have all of the information. You are responsible for acting for these kids and no one else. You answer to the parents. They know what is best for their children. And the masks, it's simple, should be an option, not a mandate. Parents are the ones who make the medical decisions for their kids. You have failed these children and continue that failure until parents are given back their power and you stop this blatant discrimination. And if you think this is just here in Rhode Island, it is national news. Rhode Island looks like a laughingstock for a lot of different reasons, and Providence is right on the radar. So you need to do the right thing, because we will keep coming and we will keep fighting until these kids get the rights that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Next for public comment, we have Madalena Cigaranago. I know I wish. Can I get the clear pronunciation?
It's Magdalena Chinota.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please begin when you're ready.
So this is on, correct?
Correct.
Just making sure. Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening. I'm a parent of 3 school-age children, all of whom are enrolled in a public school system in South Kingstown. I'm also a public school teacher. I teach Spanish, and I have done so for the past 16 years. I'd like to share with you, I'm actually also part of that lawsuit against the state over the irreparable harm that mask mandates are causing children. And I'd like to share with you what DOH said while under oath in court about vaccines and their efficacy. So while testifying in the Superior Court this October, Dr. McDonald of DOH cited lack of vaccine efficacy as a reason to impose universal mask mandates on all school children. But you've cited low vaccine rates as a reason to justify those mandates. I'd like to quote Dr. McDonald, and please remember he was under oath. Quote, "It's very easy for even a fully vaccinated individual to spread it, meaning COVID, from themselves to someone else. It could be unvaccinated or fully vaccinated," end of quote. This is consistent with real-world data. Rhode Island has had one of the highest vaccination rates in the entire country, yet we have also had
one of, if not the highest COVID rate as well simultaneously. The science is not on the side of mask mandates. You have no scientific or medical justification for refusing to eliminate harmful mask mandates for school children in Providence. Why are you citing low vaccination rates as a reason to forcibly mask children? Minority communities have the lowest vaccine uptake because they rightfully don't trust bureaucrats who cite non-existent science to irreparably harm their children with mandates. Do you expect to build trust with minority and immigrant communities with non-English speakers by forcing only their children to obstruct their airways for an education? By reducing only their children to vectors of disease? By irreparably harming only their children? The Rhode Island Superior Court has established that mask mandates cause irreparable harm to children. That's not my opinion, that's a fact. Public health officials are getting with it too. They're recognizing the cost of masking children for years of their lives. And as a result, the Department of Health has refused to enact further regulation. They've dropped the mandates. What do you know that they don't? How well will your mandates hold up in court when facts are actually relevant? What will you do about the voluminous evidence that masks aren't even efficacious? You're trampling on the rights of people who don't have the means to fight back. This is not a good look for you. This was taken on Thursday in a public school in Richmond. Why can our commissioner be in a school building in very close contact with other people, not wearing a mask, but it's not safe for children to do the same thing? And the notion that masks don't impair learning is ludicrous. I'm already seeing the difference because I'm in a school that the joy, first of all, the joy is palpable in my school building. You can feel it. I can already see the difference teaching Spanish without a mask on and being able to see my students' mouths and faces and expressions. There's no comparison to 2 weeks ago. Today, just today, I asked my students a question and there was no answer. And normally I would have assumed they didn't know the answer, but I saw several of them mouth the correct answer. And as I was able to address it and elicit it from them and interact with them in a way that I couldn't have 2 weeks ago because I didn't know what they were thinking. They couldn't show me without their words. Restore bodily autonomy to the children of Providence and let go of the mandates. The time has come. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Christine Waldeck. Ms. Waldeck with us. Okay, if Ms. Waldeck appears before we wrap up public comment, we will have her join us. Next, I have Adrian Bonilla.
Adriana Bonilla, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Please begin when you're ready.
I'd like to start off with I'm an educator, one whom is for choice. I believe in personal choice and preference, as 400 testimonies were already given to the Senate. Educators, you name it, they were there. Walking in the halls daily, it's mask up, cover your nose. Do we stop and think about the deaf or the mute who actually need to see faces, or the mom who was told that her son was kicked out of class when he had severe breathing problems and nosebleed, and yet he's reprimanded and kicked out of class? I see much larger issues that we are not even bringing to the table to discuss. The safety in schools, the fights, the lack of not knowing how to write a basic paragraph, simple math, there's staff shortages, there's kids smoking, there's cutting classes, they're walking at 12 noon through the door. Why does no one talk about how masks are harmful, the short and the long-term effects? You can see it in the kids' eyes. That's basically all you can actually see. The kids don't even engage anymore. Why would they? When they constantly have to repeat yourself or they can't even be understood. We want choice. For those who want to mask, we are respectful of your choice, but we also ask for the same respect to be given. Children have on a mask for at least 6 hours. Why is this that there's even windows that were open when it was cold temperatures? That's not acceptable. This is discrimination, as they've already mentioned. This is only happening in minority schools, that is Providence and Central Falls. What happened to them? Hold on one second. Oh, this is a personal story. So I've already mentioned it to Javier, and I told him about it when he walked to Mount Pleasant. So there's a mother who's my husband's stepmom, and she vaccinated her child only because she thought she was going to be denied entry to school. What a fallacy that is. We are failing these children. They deserve choice. Again, like they've already mentioned, maybe they are hesitant because just Gigi experiment. Should we bring knowledge to that once again? Every family should get a choice. This is an injustice. Do these kids not deserve choice? Are they not deserving? Don't we preach about equity on a daily and equality, but yet we don't even follow through that with our own? I think that's a disgrace. Someone needs to be held accountable because constantly we're always passing the buck. Oh, it's on Angelica, but Angelica never has answers. She's never even present. When we needed her in Mount Pleasant in a fire situation that was with safety, where was she? She wasn't present. Javier, thank you because you were actually present, and to the people of the district who actually came. But we need to be holding people accountable. We need to bring back the parents, just like they said constantly already. They're being left out of conversation. They need to be brought back. La unión hace la fuerza. So united is what we need to be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Next for public comment is Ms. Gonzalez.
Inmaculada Gonzalez.
Yes, please. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Please begin when you're ready.
Well, I'm a parent of two, and I'm here for a lot of things, but I'm going to start with the main things. I've been going through a lot. I have two kids. I'm unpleasant. My young older son is a special need. A lot of people here probably knows me already, but all I care is about our kids. My son have drooling issues. Okay, he drools, and this mask, he's getting tired of it. Every day I put the mask on, he hates it. So I feel like I'm being forced to put something, to have my son to wear something that he don't feel happy or comfortable with it. You know, it's affected him in a lot of ways. And I'm tired of repeating myself over again. There's a lot of issues that are happening in my son's school. As the parent has said it before, I don't have no respect for this guy. Why? Because he doesn't care about our kids. I'm talking about Coronari. And when somebody doesn't care about my kids and our kids, he doesn't have no respect for myself as a parent and for my kids and all the kids in my community. Okay? I have confronted these guys a couple of times. And he don't show me nothing about doing what is best for our kids, the safety of our kids. I'm always in the school. Every time I go to school, it could be noon, 1, 2, the door's way open. Kids are running all the way to the place in the school, in the hallway where my son's classes are. The back door where they get in the morning, way open. There's been fights constantly in the school. My kids keep telling about these fights every day. So where's the safety? Where's the leader of the school? Where's the chief of the building? There's mouse traps in my son's classroom. I have pictures from back in February 7th from the mouse traps and the things that I have to throw away. I reported this, I sent pictures, I sent emails, I sat down with the principal, still nothing been done. February 7th, that was the first picture with this, I found out about the issue. March 2nd, I run again, and the issues haven't been taken care of. The issue's still there, and I still have the pictures here. So now I wanted to know what is being done for the well-being of our kids. And as a lot of people saying over there, why our district is in the dumpster? Because that's the word, in the dumpster. Thank you to Angelica Infante. Where's her face over here? She's always hiding. Always hiding. When I'm getting like this, because I'm getting sick of her hiding her face. And then she go to the news and say, oh, I care so much about our kids. Oh, the kids is the first thing that we gotta look for. But what does she have done? She never showed the face. Never showed the face when we need to see her face. This is the second time this is my first time I come to this meeting. I went one to the State House. She wasn't there either. There were some people over here, like that guy over there. The senator was asking a question. He didn't have the right answer. He was making the answer up. Okay? And that's what happened. He was interrupting the senator, asking him to the question over, to get distracted and come up with lies, because that's what we're getting as a parents. And it's a lot of people have said before. My community parents, a lot of them, they don't speak English. They don't know what to do, who to call, where to go. You know, my son, I got two, like I mentioned. My other son had teach me how to serve and how to read people. Okay? And I had learned how to educate myself, inform myself. And when I come out to you guys, I come with the proof of my hands because I have it right here. Okay? And I'm getting tired. I'm getting frustrated for parents not to be the voice being heard. Right now, it's my son's voice. My son doesn't speak. I'm speaking for him. I'm speaking for all these kids that cannot speak and they've been using. Okay, the system been using them for their convenience. And what's their convenience? They pack it. That's their convenience. They pack it. Oh, these kids need this. They get it. Yes, they get it. But what our kids get? Nothing. If you go to my son's school, it's a mess. It's disgusting. It's destroyed. There's no respect. Nobody listens to nobody. The teachers are up to here. Everybody's up to here. Parents. They take an advantage because the parents, they don't have the time to go and sneak out and they throw the kids whenever they feel like. My son was one of them. But guess what? They didn't get away with it. Because when it comes to my kids, I'm everywhere. And I don't care about nobody. I don't care what people say. Look at that lady, that crazy lady. I could be crazy, but yes, you don't want to see me crazy here. Because you know the Immaculata, but nobody knows the Immaculata conception, yes. Okay? And I had enough. I'm not here to show a video. I'm not here to people clap me or nothing like that. I'm here because I'm tired and I'm a parent that I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated of seeing how the system and everybody, governing everybody, using our kids for them to get a check and they pack it because that's what's happening nowadays. Yeah. And I had enough. We pay taxes here. Okay? We're not just here sitting looking pretty. No. I'm here because I want actions. I'm tired of talking. I'm tired of this to hear for everybody and zero action. But there's one more thing that you need to know. That you're not the one that's getting hurt. I'm not the one that's getting hurt. They're not the one that's getting hurt. It's our kids. It's our kids. Is there anybody have asked themselves that question? No. Not at all. And Dr. Coronel, well, you don't have nothing to Dr. because as I say, I don't have no respect for that guy. He needs to be out of Mount Pleasant. You just reward two principals, I believe, from the 360 high school, right? How come you don't send them to teach them, the principal, how to lead a school? That's what we need to have. People that lead and teach them how to lead a school. My son, 2 months ago, he found out who was the principal of the school. What that tells you right there? That nobody knows him. Nobody can go to him. Every time I go over there, this guy is sitting in his computer. Okay? You barely see him. And when you see him looking at you, that you could see that, oh my gosh, she saw me there. Now she can say she didn't see me. That's him. I tell him one thing to him, you know? You could be not the nicest one. But doing nice, you're not doing nothing to my son because I could be the nicest person in the world. But if I'm not helping my kids and my community, what's going to help me and help my community and be nice? Nothing. I go one-to-one with him and I don't care. Because if you don't respect my kids and the women of my kids in my community, I don't need to have respect for you. I don't. I learned that. I used to be afraid to speak up. Not anymore. And I'm doing this for the parents, like, what's her name? Her. She was saying. Okay? My community, a lot of my community, they don't know about this meeting.
And it's parent conference.
You think that they wouldn't know. This is empty, to be honest with you. This would have been packed up probably for still people out there. And I'm sorry I'm taking too long. But I had enough to be waiting, and I was waiting for this time. Okay? My community need to be aware of what's going on. My kids, our kids, and my kids deserve better. Okay? Especially our special kids. They didn't choose to be in a wheelchair. They didn't choose to not be able to speak up. They didn't choose to not be able to see or hear. They didn't choose none of that. Okay? So they deserve better. And I don't want people to be using my kids in my community and all the kids, our kids, for them to get away what they want. enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallo. Okay, so I know that there's been several folks, I believe, that have signed up for public comment while others are speaking. So we're gonna go through that list as well and give those folks an opportunity to speak. There's some folks that we haven't called on as of yet, and I have a few names here that I'm also gonna call on. So I'm gonna start with if Miss Helen Dukes could. Ms. Dukes, thank you.
President Thomas, also, if there's a way you could look through the first list, the list that you had before, to see if anyone showed up after.
Yep, I'm gonna swing back around to those folks after we get clear with the list here that I have. Ms. Dukes,
Hi.
it's good to see you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, President Thomas, Superintendent, Interim, and the board. I'm here on a lighter note. I'm the president of the Juneteenth RI committee, and I'm requesting that PPSD add Juneteenth to their calendar to be recognized. Roger Williams University just added it to theirs. It's a recognized holiday. We already know it's a federal holiday. So I'm just requesting that you guys recognize it. It's a small step made towards recognizing the accomplishments of African Americans, the emancipation of enslaved Africans, and the resilience of the slaves, which also was indigenous individuals as well, because those that look Black, if you were Indian, you were considered African American. They just put you in that whole pool. So culturally, this will bring pride to the minority community, seeing that through this emancipation, civil rights movement was birthed, which created opportunities for every minority group that touched the American shores. So I just ask that you guys sign calendar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dukes. And next on my list is Pilar McLeod. Is Ms. McLeod present? Okay. Ms. McLeod is not present. Okay. Next, Mr. Enrique Sanchez. Is Mr. Sanchez present? I believe I see him. Perfect. PPSD educator at Central High School. Mr. Sanchez, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I would like to begin with thanking our school board here for hosting a lot of parents, students, community leaders, educators, and I wish more politicians were here too. I want to start out by saying that I feel and I understand the frustration of our parents who have been here advocating to get rid of the mask mandate. And I don't want to jump into much into that because I have other things I want to talk about quickly. But the only thing I want to say is that while I understand and I empathize with them, because you're right, there's a lot of discrimination, a lot of racism that has to do with how health policies are taken into consideration when considering our Providence public schools. I think there was a reason for why we had to be aggressive and have a mask mandate for our schools, which was because we saw there as educators there at our schools that a lot of our students were getting sick. We were missing half of the student population. Even though we have had students who have passed away from the COVID-19, they were going home and they were getting their parents sick, their grandparents sick, and their elders. And that was the transmission, from the young people to the parents and the older people. But anyway, I hope cases stay low. We're able to work at our public schools, our school community, and we're able to move past this pandemic. But we definitely have to keep up our vaccination rates. I'm here in support of a more transparent, more open dialogue, more parent involvement, more student involvement, support for the way that we handle our process to looking for a new superintendent in our Providence public schools. I want to post here quickly something that I posted something online a couple weeks ago. It was, I'd say the most frustrating thing about being involved in our Providence education community is knowing that many of us folks who make the decisions at the Rhode Island state, local level of government and our education leadership don't understand the struggle of our kids in Providence. Now, how are we supposed to pursue transformative and institutional change if elitists and wealthy folks with no connections to Providence or to our kids are in charge of our schools that serve our most marginalized kids? How do you understand the struggle if you've never have lived through the struggle? Throughout these last couple of years, being involved with the education community, there's been a lot of ups and downs, working with a lot of great teachers, students, educational leaders, parents. I've seen it all, we've all seen it all. But what we miss the bigger picture a lot of times, that people who aren't involved in our community, who aren't involved in Providence educational or politics, because they're both intertwined. So I think we need to get away from that notion that education and politics are not intertwined. They are intertwined, very completely intertwined. That's been the biggest frustration, having folks from New York, from California, from Florida dictate the decisions that are made here in Providence public schools, and that affect our Black and brown, mostly Black and brown working poor students. So, I champion and I support a more transparent process, dialogue, and I know all of you on the school board are trying to pursue towards that. Our school districts, RIDE, our politicians need to step it up. Our city councilors, our mayor, our state senators, our state representatives, our treasurer, all of them, they all have to get involved with Providence public schools and education as a whole. So, I champion and I support, and I hope that we keep having in-person school board meetings until we find a more open approach and a window of opportunity to select a superintendent, whether that's Dr. Javier Montañez, who has roots in this community, or another superintendent that isn't being controlled from the state house or from some privatizations, educational community in New York. So thank you, Tyrell, and thank you, Jesus, and some of the other school board committee members here who have been championing these school board meetings, and I look forward to working alongside all of you. Thank you.
Mr. Sanchez, thank you for your comments and thank you for your service to the district. Okay, next for public comment is Samantha Kelly present. Okay, we do not have Ms. Kelly present. Christine Waldeck. Ms. Waldeck present. Okay, we do not have Ms. Waldeck present. Is Ms. Malika Williams present? Ms. Williams. Ms. Williams, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Please begin when you're ready.
Okay. Good evening, school board. My name is Malika Williams and everyone in the room. I'm new to Providence Public Schools for only about a year or so, to Providence itself. It is very disheartening from everything I had to hear tonight. But as a parent myself, my child was assigned to Destefano Middle School. He's 11 years old. I do want to say first and foremost, the acting superintendent, I appreciate you. Initially, when my struggles began at Destefano Middle School, the school is disgraceful. The way that the kids are learning, the fighting, the things that are happening, the leadership there, I don't know where it is. My son was suspended at school. He hasn't been to school since November 7th. I reached out to the principal and the superintendent, the acting superintendent, the first time that he was suspended. Thank you so much. Somebody from his office got back to me and said, you know what, this is not acceptable. The kids are coming out of a pandemic and they need to learn. I want your child back in that school building. I appreciated that call. It let me know that there is some kind of conversation around social and emotional. Not all parents don't show up. I show up, I show out, I'm consistent. There is a misrepresentation that because you're Black or you don't speak English or you're poor, that you don't show up for your children and that you're not educated. I'm educated because I show up. I also participated in the Parent Advisory Council, was a member of it, consistent with it, brought ideas and showed up. The principal of that school never reached out to me. They called the police on my child. My husband and I had to rush to the school before the police got there. 11 years old, social and emotional, disabilities, not physical disabilities, but need support. That day I made a decision, you will not lock my child up. I did everything I could to send letters. I run here on my 30-minute lunch break to this building to find out who is in charge, who I need to speak to, who do I call, what do I do next? Constantly getting turned around. I received an email, I have documentation, everything. Like that lady with her cell phone, I've learned to take pictures and document everything. Didn't get anywhere. I'm now homeschooling my child, not getting any credits, purchase a software to educate my child, because my child deserves an education just like yours. It is disgraceful that as a parent, to show that every time you call, that I couldn't get a meeting. But you know what I found most disrespectful? We're writing up jackets on our kids. How are we writing up the jackets? The educational documents on our kids, we're putting information in there on how negatively that they're acting, but there's no resources to support them for doing any better. And the parents are not aware of this. You know how I found out? I said, I'm gonna work hard. My husband and I, we're gonna send our child to a private school. They gave my child 7 days to shout out their private school. When they received the jacket from Providence Public Schools, the principal came to me and said, I'm sorry, there's nothing that we can do here. From the information that we received from Providence Public Schools, your child can't come here, we can't handle it. Like my son committed a crime. The day that the police were to be called on my child, he had not put his hands on anyone. He had not touched anyone physically. Prior to that, had he had a fight? Yes. If you look at the page for Destefano School, you'll see all the fights. But there's no respect, there's no conversation, there's no resources. So when we turn things around, how we turn them around if there's no thought and process of what social and emotional looks like? And when we have adults that don't know what de-escalation is, instead they escalate it. I want to be a part of the change. I want my child and other children that suffer like my child to have the support that they need. And I'm willing to be a part of that change. But I can't do it by myself. My child deserves to be in a classroom with other kids. We don't have the money, but I found improv classes. I have a therapist. Everything that you're supposed to do, because public education is all right, right? I'm doing it. And I'm gonna do it because my child deserves it. But what I wanna know is why nobody is, you're quick to have a manifestation meeting. You're quick to write up a jacket on a child. You're quick to make sure that this child does not get a chance to get into any other school. But you're not doing anything to support the parents that show up and those that can't show up. That's all I have to say, and thank you for listening to me.
Ms. Williams, thank you for your comments. If you could, Ms. Williams, if you could just leave your contact information with
Mr. Thomas,
with
sir,
Mr. South.
respectfully, I don't really even believe that anybody will call me. I would love to show you my notebook. I got everybody's phone number, name, dates and times they call, and nobody's doing nothing.
Ms. Williams, I am not doubting that you have done your due diligence in reaching out. I'm asking you to leave your phone number so I can reach out and follow up with you personally.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you again, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Roberto Jean. Is Roberta here?
Roberta Engel, maybe? Sorry.
Yes. Thank you. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you. So thank you all for your service to the Providence Public Schools. I am a teacher in the public school system in Providence. I'm also a PTO member
at West Valley Middle School. A strength of the turnaround action plan is found in the opening, page 2. It states, "We are excited about this plan, but it is just the starting point. Our shared success depends on a fully collaborative effort that includes students, parents, teachers, community groups, the faith-based community, and local elected officials." So I'm here tonight as a community member who's asking you all to follow the TAP and to give voice to the community. In the hiring, specifically right now, we're talking about in the hiring of the next superintendent. And again, this is no reflection upon the interim, but hiring the next superintendent and implementation of TAP, Turnaround Action Plan. There are additional sections of the TAP that emphasize the importance of giving voice to the community, including the 4 core values, which in quote says inspire a thoughtful, conscientious approach to change. It lists number 3, transparency. Information must be available and accessible so decisions are driven by data and informed by the community. The 3 pillars that guide our vision for success in the TAP. Pillar number 2 is the engaged communities. Sadly, the community has not been engaged fully, and transparency, I believe, is something we still are hoping for. I'm concerned that RIDE and the network, their actions since June of 2020, when the TAP was issued, are not congruent with the TAP, which clearly states again, listen to the community's voice. Just 2 recent concerns. In year 1 of the TAP network, RIDE moved 9th graders from one school to another without broad family community input. Also in year 1, they reconfigured Fort Salina School without broad family community input. In year 2 of TAP, the network RIDE closed Fort's Elementary without broad family and community input. So again, the TAP states our shared success depends on a fully collaborative effort that includes students, parents, teachers, community groups, the faith-based community, and local elected officials. I have to say, I've been really moved by a lot of the comments that have come tonight. And while I sort of have this right now, my emphasis is on the superintendent and voice, it is clear. It's really sad. I've never been to this before. Is how many parents feel voiceless, and I think a lot of the parents, I don't know how they held it together. They, as they mentioned, they're the tip of the iceberg. They're the ones that have the ability somehow to get themselves here. But think of all those families that are not here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to the district. Next, we have Osmara. It looks like the last name may be Waters. Is Osmara Waters present? Okay. Next on the list, we have Brother Gary, ELM. He's an OA. Mr. South, do you mind? Thank you.
My name is Austin Weeks.
Oh, is it Weeks?
Weeks.
Yes, that is it. Please come forward, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, I moved to Rhode Island like in 2002, and I raised a young man. And when I first moved to Rhode Island from Boston, I heard that the schools over here were atrocious, terrible, So I never sent him to school here. I commuted him to Boston every day to go to school. Now, he was born in 2004. He's now 18, and he's gone through the Boston school system. And all the time that I've been in Rhode Island, I've always heard that the schools here are terrible, right? And now, kind of like TikTok too, because you have a young lady here, a teacher, Marquis. And she's a pillar of her community. She has done well in her community. And she put herself through college, and she has started teaching in her local area, teaching. And then to find out that she's so easily dismissed, the thing that you are looking for, you know, in diversity and equity, having a teacher from the community that the kids can emulate and can pair off of, you know, and she's laid off so easy. To me, it's a terrible misjustice. I really think you should rethink and reinvestigate her cause. You understand? I mean, I'm right here in Providence. I'm right here in the West End. You understand? And to hear that you know, and there's not like there's like a throwaway amount of teachers that you can just throw away, especially diverse and from the community. You know, I really do believe you should reinvestigate her case. And the second part for me too is that, you know, as a community person, that we need to have transparency within the school system. Because like I said, I'm from outside. I come here and your reputation hasn't gone away. Your reputation is still terrible. You understand, as a school system. You know, I was fortunate. I wasn't educated in America. I'm from another land, and I got educated over there. You know, but then when I come over here, you would figure this is the great United States. Everybody here should be wicked intelligent because you have all the resources. But then you hear that there's a school system that is derelict. It's terrible. I mean, I couldn't even bring my grandson and take him to your school. You understand? So my thing is transparency. You're gonna vote in. You need a new superintendent. So the community should be part of that process. You know, I mean, you need to post it. I might want to run for the job. You understand? Because, you know, like I said, I might have a new perspective that you've never seen before. Because obviously this school system needs some new input. But I believe that with transparency, with the community's input, that we could really find a superintendent that might fit this community better.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Thank you for waiting. So, Ms. LaSalle, is Brother Gary present? Okay. Brother Gary, thank you for joining us, sir. Thank you for waiting. Please begin when you're ready.
How you doing, everybody? Board. I'm Brother Gary, the founder of Black Lives Matter Rhode Island. I have a few issues I want to talk about, mainly about, you know, when we talk about the Black and brown community, unfortunately, we talk about the kids that are not being served to a capacity of their future. So it's alarming we talk about the mask in different areas. Poorly that we look at the demographics, right? And we look at other counties, and you look at the description of Providence. Every time something happens, it's almost where the Black and brown kids suffer so much in New England. We talk about from education to being unprivileged. It's really sad, right? And we know what's going on, but we have to step up as a community, as leaders, as the school system, period. These kids are being failed at an alarming rate. It's something for us as a community to look at. You're talking about masking, right? They don't wear masks in these certain counties or these schools in Rhode Island. It's crazy. Providence kids, like, we have to wear masks? That's absurd. It's really sad. It's something to look at. And some of our kids are suffering from the insomnias of not wearing masks. Some of them are sick. Some of the kids can't even imagine to put on, you know, a good quality mask, right? Because they're already dealing with, you know, the health issues, some of them. So it's something to think about as a community, right? The kids are really suffering in education here. And now we got to go deal with this again. There's so many poles to this thing and layers. So we got to step up as a community. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Brother Gary, thank you. And thank you for waiting, sir. Okay, so that concludes everyone that I have on my list that has signed up for public comment. Is there anyone that is out there that did not sign up for public comment but would like to come forward and speak? Ma'am, please. If you don't mind stating your full name for the record.
My name is Shirley Francis Fraser.
Ms. Fraser, thank you for joining us.
I am the education director for the NAACP. My organization wants to thank Terrell and Jesus for inviting and organizing the public to come forth and speak regarding the superintendent, the transparency, and why a permanent superintendent should be placed. We're thankful for Javier Martinez and the fact that he is in place now, and that he is a person of color who has proven himself here. But there needs to be a permanent superintendent, one with his background, who will adhere to the turnaround plan mandate. I serve on that turnaround plan. I was selected to serve on that, a member of the committee. And it's sad to see the fact that that plan has not been adhered to. Practically since then, we had a doctor, he just basically came here and ignored the mandates of the plan. It's just sad to see that the community is supposed to be involved with the IB program, the International Baccalaureate Program. There's been no outreach to parents regarding that program. I have also served as on the Hope High School Community Advisory Board. There's been no outreach whatsoever to include the parents. There's barely been any training for the students and the teachers regarding that program. There's been no, through the Johns Hopkins, there's supposed to be 10% of the students that have had 10% reading and math proficiency, even below those numbers. Since the cap, there's been hardly any increase or any growth in proficiency. We know a pandemic occurred, but there's been no hiring of remedial intervention. There was some sort of West Ed remedial intervention through West Ed, but then that was changed through the chief of change. There's been no adherence at all and no commitment to raising the level of education for the Black and brown students. So that's a concern of the NAACP. We're also concerned about the wellness. It's been proven that students learn best from practitioners who look like them. There might be some wellness people here. We know that there's a shortage, but I'm aware of 6 people of color who are certified wellness professionals who've not been able to get in the door of PPSD to help these students, particularly at Hope High School. And we'd like to see that turned around. We look forward to meeting with you, Mr. Superintendent, soon to get these wellness professionals in place, to particularly help the Black and brown students at Hope High School, 93% who are Black and brown. The concern of the MLL students and how they are basically neglected, that's just unconscionable. We have some suggestions to turn that around through the NAACP. SROs, there was a incident at Mount Pleasant and many other incidents concerning students who are harassed by SROs who should be approached by wellness professionals instead and turned around. So we'd like to begin that conversation about how we can get our professionals we know are here who have not been able to engage with these students to help turn them around and make them the whole children that the system is supposed to be making them. We also appreciate and support Helen Baskerville Duke's suggestion that Juneteenth be added to the holiday calendar, because as a system, 93% black and brown, Juneteenth is certainly a mandate that needs to embrace the students. We have educators who may not understand, but Juneteenth is something that they embrace, they can enjoy, and we can all participate in as a community. Finally, we've heard testimony about mask mandates. The NAACP supports mask mandates. We're concerned that there's been a lack of vaccination outreach for the Providence public school system. We know you've done what you could, but there needs to be better coordination from the Department of Health at each school. Why cannot the students at each school be vaccinated? We feel that just needs to be coordinated and stopped so that we can have 93 or even 100% of our students vaccinated, not the 38%. Masks have been proven to save lives. And so until we get that vaccination in place, we need to do what we need to do. So we thank you for your time. Thank you for giving us time. Thank you, Jesus and Tyrell.
Ms. Frazier, thank you for waiting. Thank you for your time as well. Is there anyone else who did not sign up for public comment but would like to come forward and speak? Okay. I have 5 written comments that were submitted, and I'm going to submit all 5 of those written comments into the meeting minutes as well.
President Thomas, can you please read those 5?
So there's a couple of them that are in length, and by me submitting them into the meeting minutes, folks will have access to them to review them as soon as they're uploaded into the school board portal. Okay. Next, we have school board comments. Are there comments from members of the school board?
Yes, I have some comments on today. I want to thank each and every person that came and spoke about each and every topic that is currently going on in the school district. I know next week the board has a school board retreat, and hopefully we can look at all of these concerns, sort through them, and see exactly how we could get a solution. So I really want to thank each and every individual that came out on behalf of all of these issues. NAACP, BLM, teachers, parents, students, everyone that came out. And this is something that I know I take very serious, and the board does as well. So hopefully we can get these resolved and make sure that we respond to each and every individual appropriately. But thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Are there additional comments from members of the board? Mr. Escobar, please.
I think tonight really signifies why the school board exists, why this entity exists. Public comment is so important, right? That's one of the main reasons why, because it's one of the reasons why I voted against the takeover, because all of the issues that came across today, whether you're for or against some of the hot button topics we got talked about, especially mask mandates, this venue, right? The school board, these individuals that live in the city were able to hear the voices of parents today, and they don't feel that they have a voice, and that's why it's so important. And it's also so frustrating on the other end, because we can support resolution one way or the other. We can hear their concerns, but we know how the current processes go in terms of whether we wanted to support one policy issue or the other. It goes to the central question: where are Providence families, students, our kids supposed to go when to be heard? SROs is one of the issues that got brought up today in terms of Mount Pleasant. In June of last year, the school board passed a resolution to take out SROs out of our school district, right? So that was something that this body decided that we were going to vote and support, and pre-takeover that would happen, because we listened to the will of our community. as we talked about the superintendent search, right? That's been something that was brought to us today. I'm in support of just clarity. Now, when I signed on to the school board in 2014, before I was on the school board, 2014, I was actually on the superintendent search committee that President Hughes at the time organized. It was a large committee of individuals that led to appointing a superintendent, and was able to get as much feedback as much as possible. And I would say that when I joined the school board, a superintendent that I would have loved to support and appoint is definitely someone like a Dr. Montanez, someone who is from the city, someone who understands our kids, our families, and all of that have came in and is well known, and I think has been doing a great job as interim. So I think even if I make a call for a public search, right, or just more clarity, has nothing to do with Dr. Montanez. It has everything to do about the system, because I don't know what is going on in terms of whether we're going to have a permanent superintendent or not. Some of the families, the teachers, they don't know what is necessarily going to happen with that search. When we talk about the John Hopkins report, right, the infamous John Hopkins report, one of the things that I think is always pointed to is the layers of bureaucracy that existed, right? This is one of the reasons why we wanted to take over. And now, how many layers of bureaucracy do we have? Seriously, I would ask my school board members, some of my new school board members, thank you for applying to be on here. How many layers of bureaucracy do we have right now? I'll leave it as that in terms of layers of bureaucracy. We need RIDE to provide clarity. We don't need a takeover. We need a partnership between the state and the city, the families, the communities, our school board, that I think is talented and is well representative of this city. The takeover is clearly confusing for the families and the community groups in order to have their voice heard. They can come here, we can hear them, we can take hours of testimony, but how much can we actually do to sort of support that voice? The takeover is confusing, and we've heard a consistent voice of, we don't know who to go to, right? We don't know who to go to. That is a consistent voice. That is a problem. That is a problem for our city. I would ask everyone on the school board, ask people that are listening, is our education system better today in terms of the government than it was pre-takeover? That's a serious question, right? I was happy to see our Providence delegation. I think it was about 10 or 11 individuals voted today to ask the Providence School Board, right, to acknowledge the Providence School Board to hold a special meeting around appointing a superintendent. I think that's interesting. I think there's a lot of things that the school board should do when working with not only our Providence delegation, but our Providence City Council, because it's one of the few actions I've seen where it's talking about, we want transparency, we want clarity on the roles and responsibilities of where RIDE exists within our school district. So I think that's a good sign, but how do we work? How do we all work together, right? How do we all work together? This is not a good system. I do not feel good as a school board member, given the roles and responsibilities that we have. So I'm in support of holding an additional meeting for the superintendent. Again, I'm in full support of Dr. Montanez of staying on as superintendent. I really am, because again, when I joined the school board, I wanted to be able to be on the school board to vote in support of someone that is, again, reflective of our community. But I don't want to go too much on a rambling aspect. I will say we have new members of the school board, and I will preach this as a member. I think it's best if we try to move as united as possible. One of the things working within teams or companies or organizations, stuff like that, is especially when working with people, is to try to assume good intent, right? And I either know of our background in terms of where we come from, why we signed up for this school board, and I think we just need to make sure that we're all coming from an aspect of we want Providence to succeed. We want the best for our students. I truly believe, I definitely know our interim superintendent wants the best for our students, for our families. Even Commissioner Infante Green, I believe she has great intentions, right? I think there's just we need to get to an ability to work together, to start having more communications with each other, to start understanding where we come from. I think we all want the same things, and I think there are serious issues that we all can agree on that the state can be a great partner on. One, we really need to revamp our school building, right? Consistently, everyone in the room, universally, we really need to revamp our school building. Two, we need a top quality, diverse educational workforce that the Providence Teachers Union should be in full support of and at the table in trying to be able to work with us and do that. And three, we need to make sure our students feel safe in our schools. Everyone here can agree to that. Doesn't matter if you're in the General Assembly, if you're in the City Council, if you're on the school board, if you're the governor, commissioner. There's a lot of things that we can work together on to better the lives of our Providence youth. And adults need to stop getting in the way. We need to stop getting distracted. We need to start communicating better with one another, and we just need to get to work. So that's how I feel. I don't feel that that's a school board member, but a little bit of a venting session. That's how I feel about it.
Very much welcome, Mr. Escobar. Thank you for your comments, sir. Are there additional comments from school board? Dr. Santel.
Travis and I see eye to eye on pretty much all of this. I think he stole most of whatever thunder I possess. But there are a few things I did want to say. And one is actually just to reiterate Travis's point about who the members of this board are. Because we are the community too. Every member of this board either attended Providence Public Schools or has children attending Providence Public Schools or both. And we have volunteered to do this work because we believe very deeply in not just the kids and the families in this district, but also in a lot of the great teachers and principals that we have in this district as well. And we need the help of the community. I'm really, really grateful for everybody who came and spoke tonight, including people with whom I completely disagree, and there were several of them, about masks and vaccines and so forth. Because we, under the Crowley Act, which is the legislative, is the law that allowed for the takeover to take place, we, the school board, have no power at all. The only power that we have is the power of the people, is the power of community, is the power of our ideas, is the power of whatever kind of moral capital and persuasion we can bring to bear. So it is really, really important for the school board to still be here as a place for people to come and say what they have to say, whatever it is they have to say. And to that end, I do think we are going to have to do a search for a national search, as Providence has done in the past, for a superintendent. Probably because of the way those things work, it's something that we'll have to start building up to now, but that will actually start to take place in the next school year, not now. We're a little late on the calendar for that. But that has to be a process that involves the communities. I've been on the school board for almost a decade. And sadly, I've been through many, many superintendent searches. We've had to do this many times. in my time on the board. And we have always tried, I think generally with some success, to put together an inclusive process. I was like Travis, I voted against the takeover, precisely because I thought that shifting power up to the state, absolute power up to the state, was an enormous mistake. I think it takes power and information out from the hands of the people, and puts it in the hands of a bureaucracy that is as far from the kids and the people as any bureaucracy could be. That said, that's where we are. So I want the turnaround plan to succeed. The only way that it can succeed is if we here in Providence, I'm a Providence public school parent, as well as a school board member, remain vigilant in holding RIDE and one another accountable. And we need the help of the community to do that. I want to also say that, as Travis pointed out, this board in June of last year unanimously passed a resolution asking for SROs for the police to be removed from the Providence Public Schools. Nothing has happened in the last 10 months to move me off of my view that that was the right thing to do. I personally would like to see us, if not reintroduce that resolution, at least reiterate it. I know what the governor's position is on it. The governor is wrong on this issue. I think we need to make that clear. There is no reason why police should be laying their hands on an 11-year-old boy in one of our public schools. None. And we as the adults have to own that until it doesn't happen. Until it doesn't happen. I don't want that happening to my son. I don't want that happening to anybody else's son. It isn't going to happen to my son. We all know how this works. It can't happen. And we have to, if we want to have schools of supportive culture and restorative justice, then we got to get louder about it. We have to get louder about it. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say. I have a lot more to say about masks and vaccines, but I'm kind of exhausted and tired, and there are people more qualified on this board to make this point. I am going to say one thing about it. I'm not a doctor. I am someone who is married to someone with who is immunocompromised. Many of you yourselves may be, or you may love those who are. Vaccines work. We have just been in the midst of the largest international experiment with more data than the history of any other vaccine. We have a tremendous amount of information about their effectiveness. We also know that masks work. I realize that wearing masks, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, I find wearing the mask to be a giant pain in the ass. My students find it to be a pain in the ass. I've had 2 years of students not feel like I haven't gotten to know because they're wearing masks, and it makes me sad. Masks impinge on freedom, maybe. Lung cancer really impinges on freedom. And the compromises that it does to someone's immune system. So if we want to have a community, I think we can try and protect the most vulnerable members of our community and do so through those things that are best supported by medical science. That includes vaccines, that includes masks. The one great regret I have over the last 2 years is that we have not done more vaccinations of the kids in our city and in our district. I think we've fallen short on that, and I think it's unfortunate. So I guess I did have something to say about that. I'll stop.
Dr. Santel, thank you for your comments, sir. Are there additional comments from members of the board?
Yes.
Mr. Nievel, please, go ahead, sir.
I want to thank everyone, teachers, members of the community, and parents for coming and speaking out. I personally believe that parents should have a voice and also should have a voice in the children's education and also be part of the decision process. I also believe that Providence Public School Board needs to start pushing for a permanent superintendent, and I need the community. We need the community to be involved. We need parents to be involved. We need And also we need also to discuss and also address the mask mandate immediately. Um, Hopefully in our next meeting we can also talk about it.
Thank you, Mr. Mahinga. Mr. Nunez, did you want to jump in, sir?
All right, so I wanna start off by saying I was very moved. Growing up in the city, attending a Providence schools, I'm hearing these parents tonight. It really hit home because my mom, she didn't speak a single word of English, and I would say I was a troublemaker when I was in school, when I was going through the system. Um, and she'll walk through the schools and she'll come and check up on me and she'll say, hey, why is this school look a mess? What are your teachers doing? Where's the administrator? Why aren't they teaching the correct way? Things like that. Why is the system so broken? And I hear the parents cry out for help because change doesn't start apart, it starts together. And yes, I get the point of, there's obviously certain aspects that stop us from doing what we can actually do now in terms of the state table, because the board did have that power before, but obviously in terms of it being, pushed over, it's limited us. And one of my goals, I know I'm new to the board, but one of my goals, and I have a lot of passion for my community, and I care for the students, and I care for the families, I care for the teachers. I know educators in the system who leave their classrooms at 5:30, 6 p.m. at night, doing lessons for their students for the next day, contacting teachers, making sure their students are not only successful inside the classroom, but outside the classroom. For me, that's one of my goals, is to advocate and continue advocating for our community members, our families, and the teachers who work in the system, because there's teachers out there that care and believe in their students. And no, we should not fail a student just because of the issues that are going on at home. It needs to be pushed, it needs to be addressed. And I know that we can allocate the correct resources to push the change, advocate for our students, for our families, our teachers, and come together as a community, because it's important. And they're counting on us. You can see that. You can see every single person who addressed, whether we disagree or agree what they were saying on their thoughts on mandates, on the classroom, the structure. They generally care for their students. And they reached out, and I can see that they reached out to us for help. And now is the time for us to sit back, listen, and address these issues in a timely manner so that every student can be successful and move on from Providence schools with pride, joy, happiness. Thank you.
Mr. Nunez, thank you. Are there additional comments from members of the board? I have some comments that I do want to get to, but I want to be mindful of my colleagues. Are there additional comments, ladies?
President Thomas, I have some comments.
Dr. Glover, please.
First of all, I want to thank all the community members, and especially the parents, teachers, and everyone that's come out tonight. It's really wonderful to see a full room and to hear your concerns, and I want to work to address them. I also want to thank Dr. Santo for trying to set the record straight on science. As many of you probably know, I am a physician, I'm an epidemiologist, and parent, and have my kids in the Providence public schools. And I don't want us to be confused. This current vaccine, the COVID vaccine, has been the most well-studied of all vaccines that we've administered, and it is safe and it does not cause cancer. Masks are effective. This is an airborne virus, and they're effective, but we should consider having a conversation about when the CDC came out with community levels, they said that we are a low community level, and we can start to have conversations, I think, about when is the off ramp for masks appropriate. So I appreciate all those folks that came tonight to talk on this issue. I have my own parent story tonight that I'm going to share because I think it is relevant to the turnaround plan. I want to share the experience my son had this school year in one of PPSD's fourth grade classrooms. When I joined the board nearly 2 years ago, I did so because I thought there was value in having parents on this board whose kids attend Providence public schools. And I hope my comments tonight provide some insight into the work that we still have to do. And I also want to thank Interim Superintendent Montanez for continuing to do this work, and I've been continuously impressed with how hard you're working to do so. So So at the beginning of the school year, we learned that the teacher, our school's principal, had selected to teach my son's class would instead be participating in the principal's academy. In her place, a veteran teacher who has worked in the district over a decade was to be the classroom teacher. Unfortunately, this teacher was unable to perform even the most basic teaching duties, and another place of employment was found for them within the district just 2 weeks into the school year. This was the start of a year that's been marked by numerous disappointments for our fourth grader, and is the reason we are now looking at other schools. After the first teacher left, a long-term sub spent much of the first and second quarter in the classroom, but long-term substitutes aren't familiar with the curriculum, best teaching practices, and how to address classroom disruption in a way that creates positive behavior change. So after several rocky months in December, we learned that a retired teacher had agreed to step in. She promised our kids she was there for the duration, but the next week we learned that the classroom behaviors were too challenging for her to manage, and she stepped down. You can imagine the disappointment that my son experienced and the kids in that class experienced. As a parent, I did what I could to advocate for the kids, including having multiple discussions with school staff, reaching out to recently retired teachers I knew, volunteering to help myself, speaking with PPSD's own face office and HR. At one point, I opened my own job search account to advertise the position posting. No kidding. Finally, a retired reading coach took the job. In an early January meeting on Zoom, the parents met with the new teacher and shared our concerns. The new teacher is now doing very hard work, I'm very grateful, to get the class reacquainted with learning again. But most days they're still fighting, bullying, and yelling, which prevents instruction. Despite the best efforts of the principal and the coaches to intervene, most days appear to inflict more trauma on these kids than provide opportunities for learning. I've spent the greater part of this year questioning my decision to keep my son in this class and in PPSD. The other options, disenrolling him mid-year and experiencing yet another transition, or moving him to the other classroom seem poor or unfair. I'm telling this story because there's lessons that can be learned. First, teachers in the district who are unable to teach should not remain in the district as teachers. It is exceedingly difficult, I've learned, to find a teacher mid-year, so the first placement is really critical. And we need to talk about teacher dismissal procedures. Second, we should do everything in our power to prevent teacher absenteeism and turnover. The research shows it greatly impacts student learning. Although my son's classroom is a typical classroom, and many kids with IEPs and social emotional fallout of COVID made it more of an inclusion classroom. And we need additional supports for these classes in the form of counselors and behavioral intervention teams, we will talk about tonight. Finally, as a result of the poor climate in the classroom, several kids have developed mood disorders for the first time in their lives. Some kids have been withdrawn to do homeschooling, and several families have decided to apply to charter and independent schools. Additionally, many parents have kept their kids home to take mental health days. So in the slides we'll see today, you'll see student absenteeism as a large focus of the TAP. It's clear to me that kids who don't have consistency in a positive school environment aren't going to thrive, and they're not going to want to go to school. Likewise, if teachers don't receive the support they need, they will find other positions. So I'd like to ask the board, the superintendent and his team, and our entire community to work with me to ensure that my son's story becomes the exception and not the rule. I believe we have a historic opportunity with ESSER funds to bolster supports for teachers and staff. We must finally offer a safe and healthy environment for teachers and staff that makes learning possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goldberg. Are there any additional comments? Vice President Garcia.
Good evening, all. Today has been a really powerful meeting. Just wanted to remind everyone that public comment is available at every school board meeting, at the beginning of every school board meeting, and there are instructions on the website for how to go about doing that. So I hope that you all come back, or a new set of people come back in April for the next meeting. I wanted to very quickly recognize a change, a transition in the school board support services. So we actually said goodbye to our previous school board services and policy coordinator, Rachel Palumbo, the last couple of weeks. And I just wanted to publicly thank her for her service. I want to publicly thank Mr. Kushner for continuing to be our school board clerk and continuing to support this work, and to welcome and also thank Patricia LaSalle for stepping up to help us, and for your support during this transition. One of the things that actually Rachel was able to get started for us is to help us make these meetings a little bit more accessible. So on the website, there is actually a way to get our school board agendas translated into Spanish. Looking at it now, I think that there should be a way to make it a little bit more easy to locate. There's some language about installing an extension through Google, but maybe perhaps we can translate the agenda and actually just add it to the website as a PDF rather than having folks, maneuver the internet to get it translated. And there's also some information there about if you are a member of our community and want to attend a school board meeting but require interpreting, closed captioning, or translation services, you can also email the board services and get that assistance at least 24 hours. We just ask for 24 hours notice so we can get that situated. And so with that, our long-standing meeting with FACE, I will reach out to Mr. Figueroa to figure out how to make this information more accessible to our parents of all backgrounds and the speak all languages to see if we can get more of them here at our April meeting and future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia, and I echo your sentiments with regards to Ms. Palumbo, and want to thank Ms. Palumbo for her work with the district. Okay. So I first want to thank the community members who joined us here this evening. The school board meetings have been and will continue to be a platform for community members to come and voice their concerns. And so I hope that we continue to have community involvement at our school board meetings moving forward. I want to begin my comments by congratulating the Juanita Sanchez girls basketball team on capturing the Rhode Island Division II championship. It's always a dreadful sight to see our student athletes achieving their goals. In addition, I would like to congratulate Superintendent Martinez on receiving the Dominican Independence Heritage Award earlier this month. In my opinion, Superintendent Martinez is an inspirational leader who has stepped up to lead our district in a time of need. He works tirelessly to meet the needs of our students and their families. I want to take a few moments to share my thoughts with regards to transparency. As we continue to navigate through COVID, transparency throughout the school community is key. As a school board in our current advisory capacity, a transparent process is valuable. A transparent and thoughtful process is required, not just as it relates to the superintendent search, but more importantly, about the progress related to the turnaround action plan, or often referred to as the TAP. As the TAP involved input from community members, stakeholders, educators, school board members, RIDE, PPSD, parents, and of course, students. The TAP is what binds us together. The TAP should be our collective focus, our primary focus. As doing so will ensure the academic and social emotional needs of our students are met and position PPSD to thrive for years to come. I'm going to ask Superintendent Martinez and his team to include power metrics related to the TAP in our monthly school board update, in our monthly school board meetings. I'm looking for, or we as a community, will be looking for more transparency under engaged communities, where the TAP indicates an increased percentage of families with favorable perceptions of being involved with their child's school, increased percentage of cases in which contact has been initiated within 24 hours through a rapid response system. Under excellence of learning, Increase the percentage of PPSD students enrolled in two-star schools. Increase the percentage of students who are present 90% of the time. Increase the percentage of students who are meeting their MLO targets on access assessment. Increase the percentage of PPS students who graduate with college credits, AP credit, or CTE credentials. Increase the percentage of ninth graders who are on track for post-secondary success. Increase the percentage of students who graduate within 4 years. Under world-class talent, the tab indicates that we are to increase the percentage of teachers who are present 90% of the school year. A good example of that was displayed this evening, where we celebrated teachers for their attendance. Well, what's happening at that school that makes it work? How can we take what's happening there and replicate it throughout the district? Increase the percentage of educators of color in our total workforce. We know that this is an issue. We know that the district is working steadfastly to address it. Come here and tell us what we're doing each month to reach that goal. The tap belongs to the community. Given the disruption of COVID and the attention placed upon the turnaround action process, I agree with the notion that we need to accelerate learning for our students. Let's also accelerate transparency for our community around the work that's being done in the district. There's good work that's being done here. We need to highlight it every month. I also want to take a moment to just recognize Ms. Laura Hart. For those of you who may not be aware, Ms. Hart will be departing from PPSD at the end of the month. Ms. Hart has been instrumental in the district on a number of fronts. Ms. Hart has coordinated to have the district positively viewed in publications such as Education Weekly, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. She recently spearheaded PPSD Cares, which we now celebrate the good work that is being done in the district, as well as her efforts with ensuring that students and families receive COVID vaccinations. Tell a quick story about Laura. Dr. Goldberg and I, prior to the holiday break, were concerned about students and families receiving testing and vaccine before vacation. We reach out to Laura, we have a meeting, we express our concerns. Within 48 hours, Ms. Hart was able to coordinate with the Department of Health to have testing and vaccination available at 2 of our PPSD events prior to the holiday break. It was her work that allowed for us to return safely by way of a staggered reopening. But it also spoke to her dedication and commitment to the students and the families of the city of Providence. More on behalf of the Providence School Board, on behalf of the city of Providence, we thank you for your service and we wish you the best of luck moving forward. Lastly, I want to say a few things with regards to a superintendent search. I have listened to my colleagues. I've listened to the community. And I hear you. I want you to know that I have been in contact with the commissioner. And it's my understanding that more information from RIDE will be available within the next few weeks as it relates to next steps for the superintendent search. So with that, I'm going to ask my colleagues, the board, and the community to bear with us, or with RIDE, over the next few weeks. Let's hear what the next steps are, and then we can proceed accordingly. I understand that the issue of superintendent is one that is important to the community. And I want to make sure that we are addressing it appropriately. But the TAP is equally important. And we need to ensure that we are meeting those power metrics in the TAP. It's what binds us together. It's what our children deserve. Okay, that concludes my comments. Next on the agenda is school board committee updates. We have contracts for both policy and finance that we need to vote on. I'm going to turn it over first to our policy co-chairs, Dr. Santal and Mr. Escobar, to provide any updates. Gentlemen.
There isn't a lot to update other than to call your attention to agenda item number 14, which is the first read of the home and hospital instruction policy. We had a policy committee meeting last week, I think it was. I believe it was last week. So this is the first read. It's not yet in the template form that our policies generally are. It's my understanding that it was going to be in that form by the time you all saw it, and it is not as of yet. The contents will remain the same. The format will look somewhat different when it comes around for the second read. In the policy committee approved it as is. Right? We approved the policy. The format will look different. The template will look different when it comes around for a second read, on the assumption that we vote for it on the first one. So I think that's the only update I have for the moment.
Gentlemen, thank you. Dr. Goldberg, would you like to say anything with regards to the finance update before we open it up for questions?
The finance committee met last week Wednesday. We recommend approval of all of these contracts. Just briefly, LinkedIn contract is to improve our recruitment efforts, which we all supported. The Generation Teach summer contract allows for summer learning experiences in middle and high school. And then there's several contracts that support additional benefits for our school social workers, psychologists and counselors, and giving them memberships to networking opportunities, but also learning opportunities, and we're in support of that. The instructor contract that you see there, item 22, allows for the district to have better fluency between its different data management systems. And then there's also 2 contracts for fellows to join us. The general education fellow, there's also a data scientist fellow, and then there's also a special fellow that is going to focus on COVID response. I'm happy to answer any questions that they have.
Thank you, Dr. Goldberg. Questions from board members?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I'll go with the easier one, the LinkedIn aspect. So, are there other? I have a couple questions. So, one, are there other school districts that pay for essential LinkedIn services? Who in the district is going to be in charge of the LinkedIn profile? Is it going to live within communications, HR? Third, do we actually have to invest $16,000 for a LinkedIn profile for the district? I would hate for us to. It sounds like a nice tool. It sounds like a bells and whistles, but it kind of gets left behind, type of thing. So I would love to just feel confident there's a game plan behind this investment with LinkedIn.
I'm happy to talk about the LinkedIn contract. So this is a contract that would be overseen in the Office of Human Resources, primarily for recruiting services. So in my experience, in my previous role in Boston Public Schools, LinkedIn was a tool that was used, knowing that there's a lot of advancement in other tools that can be used, like Handshake and other tools that we're using, but LinkedIn has been helpful to find, particularly for targeted job searches versus just broad blasting of jobs. But if there are specific skill sets or roles that we're looking for, it's proven to be effective in other districts that I've been in. So our hope is, this is a time when we know we need to fight for the best talent, given the job market is fairly competitive. It's a tool that we've seen be effective in other districts. I believe this is funded through, I can't remember this, but it might be funded through ESSER, which allows us to experiment and learn and figure out over the next few years whether it's something we want to invest in long term. But I think we need to do everything we can to go after the best talent, because we are, it's super competitive job market right now.
Is it a individual person that's going to run the LinkedIn profile, and do they have the expertise? If they don't have the expertise, is there a potential sort of like trainings for them to make sure they can utilize the best investment out of that $16,000 for that platform?
Yeah, so the person who would be primarily using this is Jacqueline Duarte in the Office of Human Resources. Her background is in recruiting in the private sector in a couple different fields. So she has done a lot of, her expertise is in recruiting. So I'm fairly certain she's familiar with LinkedIn. But we'd be, always open to learning more and finding ways to use it. So we could seek out trainings to support her, but it is a tool that I know she's used before in her prior capacity as a recruiter.
This is the 1 year membership to $16,000. Excuse me? Is it a 1 year membership to $16,000?
I believe yes.
And you'd be looking to either, again, I might have a little bit more questions for $16,000 than that. I'm really interested in this. So if you were going to go seek for, and sort of like a renewal of this, what are some of the success outcomes you maybe want? I'm just really interested in this aspect.
For sure. So a couple that come to mind. We're excited we have a new applicant tracking system, and one of the benefits of it is that you can track where people come from. So we could see how many of the folks we hired actually indicated LinkedIn was the way they had found out through our jobs. So that would be one way. And I would also just say, aside from people who recently hired, how many people allowed us to access and reach out to in ways that we might not have been able to find them through kind of passive recruiting, where people are applying to them and posting. So I think some of it would be looking at how many people indicate LinkedIn was a way they found out about the district or found out about a specific job, as well as any other metrics we have on how we were able to use the target for very unique or specific skill sets we were looking for.
And I think my last question for now would be, for LinkedIn, this type of usage, would it cover teacher recruitment, or are we looking more recruiting administrative high level individuals for the district, what was linked in terms of $16,000 investment? So are we looking for educators, or are we just looking more for administrators on this, or is it just a broad brush?
I would say it can probably do all, what it's probably better positioned for than other places where it's kind of, some tools are more about blasting to as many people as you can, while this can do this. It does allow you to search for people with specific skill sets, so that would lend itself towards, not just administrators, but let's say a facilities role or something very technical, or something that is not, people may not be looking at a PPSC job site for, because they think of PPSC as solely teaching, when we have a lot of other roles we're looking for. So it can certainly help, I think, with some of the broad-based roles, or for roles like a dual language teacher, that areas that require some specialization. So I think it leans more towards some of the specialized roles, but it can be used to share information on PPSC more broadly as well.
One quick question, it's actually just for that, I couldn't figure out how to shoehorn it into the agenda, so since you're staring down the microphone, it's not a hard question, okay, rather than gotcha. We had, the board had asked for an organizational chart, and I think we had been told we would receive it, and perhaps an opportunity for you to walk us through the structure of it. We haven't received that yet, which is fine, because I think the expectation was to get it next Wednesday in our retreat. I just wanted to confirm that that will be the case, and that perhaps we can see the organizational chart several days prior. So
We received it.
Yes,
We received it.
did we? You did? Let's see.
Yeah. I can have Ms. LaSalle send it to you again, Dr. Santop. I think the district did send out a report chart to us.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Can I add something really quick? I am in agreement with all of the items from the finance committee. I like your questions that you asked, those questions that I didn't ask. I think also right now, hopefully we can also start to find some funding on retention. Definitely hearing that Laura will be departing, I want to make sure that we're able to also retain our employees here, just as well as get employees here, make it a place where people want to definitely come. So if there's any processes or procedures that we can look into to retain our employees, that would be greatly appreciated.
Understood. Can I ask additional questions on the contracts, or are we?
So this is an opportunity to ask questions with regards to both contracts with policy and finance before we enter into a vote, Mr. Escobar. So feel free.
Yeah, the only additional contract, the only additional questions I had were around the Harvard SDP fellows. So for those fellows, is this sort of the first year time our first partnership we've done around this type of fellowship program, or is there any history here? Because I know there's been other partnerships with universities and colleges before, so a little bit of history we'll love to hear.
Sure. So we've done had partnerships with Harvard SDP before. The most recent one, we currently have a fellow in our data and accountability office. And that was I recall being a board meeting at El Sesto where that was voted on. So that person has been tremendously helpful. And as we talk through some of our TAP metrics later, they've helped us build some of the systems to track that in a better way. And we're excited about the two roles here as ways to bring in talent, particularly in an area of high need, and helping us build systems for tracking and analyzing data to make better decisions for the district. So long-winded way of saying that we have had a relationship with Harvard SDP before. We currently have a fellow with us in their, I believe it's still their first year of the two-year fellowship.
And how this works, so the district puts in $99,000 for these two fellows. Does Harvard put in any sort of resources or?
Yeah, there's an intensive selection process to identify these individuals, and then they're supported through ongoing professional development, a network of individuals they work with, and ongoing support. And having seen this in other districts, it does allow the district to bring in high quality talent, particularly in areas where it's hard to find candidates often.
And it often ends up being a good pipeline for individuals who end up staying in this district longer term if they are able to find longer term roles.
And I guess this is more of a question around just staffing around data and research. We have the fellowship support, but in your opinion, should there be more of an opportunity where the state or the city looks to invest more into full-time staff separate from fellows from college institutions to sort of bulk up what we do around data and research in the district?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Ms. Jackson can add. I mean, I think we want to do both. I think some of it is making sure we do have on the data and accountability team full-time roles that do this work. But these fellowship roles allow you to bring in people and source talent in ways that can be hard to find people in a competitive job market. So I think we want to do both. And this allows us to do this, particularly with stimulus dollars, to build up and build some systems that help us have a good long-term foundation for the data work that needs to be done in the district.
Yeah, because like generally, coming from a nonprofit, career background, like generally we're trying to leverage, or I guess even government trying to leverage fellowships or different type of programs if you're trying to fill a hole from like a lack of capacity in the department. So I was just interested if that was something that you think could be bolstered in a district that would be better off for our policy and decision going forward.
I would just add that, yes, we agree. We've been looking for data engineers because we have our new data warehouse coming on board, and those positions are extremely competitive and very hard to fill. And so we have our current staff who's serving as data analysts, but also have the data engineering background with us. And so they're going to shift their roles to do the data engineering work, and our data fellows then will be able to support with the data analysts while we're continuing to look for full-time employees.
Thank you for addressing my curiosity on both those issues.
Perfect. Any additional questions from board members?
I do really quick, I do want to thank the district also on a lot of the social work contracts. I spoke about it at the finance committee meeting. Our social workers do need a lot of support. So I think that with these contracts and giving fundings for different, I just lost the word, but I do want to thank you guys for definitely looking into supporting them, helping them out, and bringing it before the board so we can definitely improve those things. So thank you so much.
Additional comments or questions from board members? There being none, we will move to the consent agenda, and I will ask for an approval of items 11 through 24. Is there a motion? Motion's been made by Mr. Stevens. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Mahingable. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any objections? Motion carries. Next, we have item 25, review on homeschool candidates. Is there a motion to approve the renew on homeschool candidates? Motion's been made by Mr. Stevens. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Santow. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carries. Next, we have the stage 2 submission. Mr. Scott.
Good evening. So the stage 2 submission was what we reviewed at last board's meeting. If you remember, that was talking about the process where we're at in terms of submitting 5 schools for a stage 2 application to RIDE. It's early on in the process, but it goes to RIDE. It'll be voted on by the council in May, and then we would proceed with construction and all that in future years. So last time it was listed as an info item, so that's what we walked through. And what we're seeking tonight is a vote to recommend approval of that. So I'm happy to go into details, but what you probably saw in the presentation was the same presentation we provided at last session.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Is there a motion to approve the stage 2 submission? Motion's been made by Mr. Mr. Stevens. I'm sorry, it's getting late. Motion by Mr. Stevens, seconded by Mr. Escobar. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Next, we have a presentation, turnaround action quarterly update.
It's late. So thank you, board members. We did want to give you an update on where we are with TAP. I do realize the hour, so I won't be going through and reading every single slide, but you're welcome to ask questions either now or at a later time. You can email and we can certainly respond in writing to your questions after. So, as we've been talking about the impacts of COVID on our students and on our entire community, about the closest area that you might be able to connect is the impacts Katrina had in New Orleans when we talk about learning loss and the studies that have been done there about how long it took to make up that learning loss. And, that was, I don't know if it was the same exact amount of time, but we are on, 2 years. So we have to understand that the learning loss is real. And so our achievement gap is also widened because of the impacts of COVID. So our work on the TAP is just that much harder, and it will take us a little bit longer to reach our target. This was just to focus on the broadcast proficiency rates by the other urban core districts. You can see how we fare against our other districts. Okay, just again looking at the Boston MCAS results from 2019 to 2021, you can see the difference in the red that their scores went down dramatically, and this is really related to the COVID impact. When we talk about the turnaround action plan, we know that this was, we had community input to reach to the targets, to determining what the targets are. What's important to understand is once you have your targets and your goals, the next step to that is to unpack and figure out how do we get there. So it's not just a target, you actually have to have a plan and action to how do we reach those targets. We've talked about priority targets versus targets, and again, remember priority targets are those ones that's going to lift the rest, and so once you hit a priority target, your other targets should go at a faster rate. So when we look at an example of a standard, which is compare and contrast stories, the priority standard is to determine the main idea of the story. So you can see if students can determine the main idea, then they can get to compare and contrast. We get asked the question a lot about how much improvement is normal. So we want students to make between 1 and 2 grade levels of growth each year. If we look how Providence has done, and then in the red box, those are pre-COVID data points. So elementary students made between 1 and 2 years growth, but it wasn't consistent year over year and with all students. Once students got to middle school, and again, this is pre-COVID, the growth slowed between 0.4 and 0.8 years growth. So they were not even making a year's growth each year. When they got to high school, it slowed even further. So you can see this was the achievement gap prior to COVID, and now COVID has made that worse. This does not mean we can't surpass that and reach our targets. We just have to be realistic about where we are now, which is why when we develop the in-between targets, you can see here, if you look at excellence in learning, and this is just one example, but you look at 18-19 was 17%, and then 2021 it went down to 8%. So the targets have been adjusted in what we refer to as a J curve, where we know that we have slower growth in the beginning, focusing on the priority targets. As we start hitting our priority targets, we expect that growth will accelerate, and so we can make more growth in the later years. Now, important to understand though, as we were talking about, we can have a target, but then we have to know how to reach it. So as we have gotten input from our school, from our teachers, from our leaders, and from the community in our meetings across with different committees, we've gotten information from them to respond to how do we meet these targets. So I'll just give you some examples of using data persistently to progress monitor our students. Implement a high quality curriculum. We already have done that in 2 areas, and we're continuing with, we're going to implement our science curriculum next year, and we'll keep going. Add 25% more time to reading, writing, and math. Doesn't mean it all has to be done in an English class or a math class, but we have to focus heavily on those areas because, again, that's priority, and that will help students be successful in all their other classes. Increasing teacher collaboration time. While we're implementing a new curriculum, while we're looking at data, what's important to understand is teachers actually have to have time to meet and discuss it. So these are just few of our high leverage strategies. These are research-based strategies that we know that will get students to increase their performance scores if we implement these. If we look at increasing the percentage of students present 90% of the school year, we're looking at adding behavior intervention staff to our schools. We have added community specialists to our schools. We are increasing that number as well. Adding social emotional support systems in all of our schools, and expanding our alternative high school programs to meet the needs of more students. If we look at engaged communities, increase the percentage of PPSD families responding to survey work. So FACE leads a working group of school administrators to coordinate parent outreach. Schools have dedicated survey work week in March to assist parents in person with a survey, and parent ambassadors will engage parents across each school. More parents and caregivers engage with the district's formal community engagement structures. So again, ensuring that each school hosts a parent, teacher, student organization that would be supported by FACE. Add a special education advisory council, the social emotional learning community of practice, and the PPSD equity committee through the district. And then to grow the parent ambassador program from parent volunteers representing 30 schools to all 40 schools. For world-class talent, we want to increase the percentage of teachers holding the ESL and BBL certification. So beginning in January 2020, teachers were offered a $3,200 stipend, and in the fall of 2021, it was increased to $8,000. We also support teachers taking the licensure test, which is like the practice test, which is a common barrier for certification. So HR offers office hours and supports for individual teachers. Also in world-class talent, increase the percentage of teachers present 90% of the school year. Again, studies have shown that the student attendance is absolutely linked to teacher attendance. The number one factor in student success is the relationship between the student and the teacher. So we need our teachers to be there for our students 90% of the year. So we've negotiated clearer language on addressing leave abuse with the PTU and conducted an audit of leave policies and processes beginning to implement best practices identified during the audit.
But I think that's a very important slide. I know usually it's like for like down to the questions, but so increase the percent of teachers present. We're saying right now or for the current school, like 64% attendance around teachers, and we're striving for 90. Or
we are saying that right now, 64% of our teachers are present 90% of the time.
64% of our teachers are present 90% of the time, and the goal is getting 90% of teachers.
Our goal is to get 100%.
100%.
But
90.
yeah.
I'm sorry, it's 9:30, and yeah, I just want to make sure.
I have some questions around that as well, but I'll wait till.
Yeah, I'll look at it. I just wanted to get clarification.
Thank you.
I just have the one more that I'm gonna highlight, so then we can go back to that one. Decrease the average number of days from proposal to submission for contract to award. And then in the spring of 2020, the procurement team was reorganized. They hired a director of procurement and decreased time to procure, while the volume of procurement has increased dramatically during COVID pandemic. So you can see everything that our team was able to procure, especially during this time where, you know, everything was held up and it was difficult for all of us. All of the rest of the metrics are in there. We do all of this behind the scenes for every single one of our targets. But just want you to be aware, and most importantly, I hope you walk away with understanding that, you know, the target is one thing, but planning for it, how we get there, monitoring our progress along the way, looking at what works, what doesn't work, looking at what's working in some of our schools, why isn't it working in other schools. We're asking ourselves those questions all the time. So there were some questions on this one?
Does that conclude your?
It does. I left the rest of the metrics in there for you to look at.
Okay.
I'm not gonna go through them all.
So, yes, let's open it up for questions from board members.
Yeah, I think I'll just add that, as it pertains to the teacher attendance, I think what's more, not more, but just important is, or just as important is actually filling those vacancies. I think there's a lot of vacancies and the reason why the data is showing the way it is. So I think that if we come up with a plan, which I believe we are, to get those vacancies covered, I think that that's also more realistic data that we have to also make sure that we capture.
Yes, and filling the vacancies is critical. This is only talking about teachers that are currently here, this is not measuring vacancies. But just so you know, when we're looking at this 64%, this means that we have teachers that are missing 20 plus days of school.
Really quick, so when we look at the data of like the kids failing, is that data all based around just the teachers that are in Providence right now and not the vacancies?
I'm not sure I clearly understand.
When we talk about the data, because we said like the students is failing due to COVID, I'm saying is that data based on the fact that, is it just based on the teachers that are not like in school, that are missing work, not showing up to school, not teaching those students, or is it based around the vacancies as well?
Our school performance data takes into account every student in whatever school that they're in. So it would be including vacancies and teachers that are in positions already.
All right. Are there additional questions?
Yeah. So is there, Boston was shown, right, in terms of a comparison. How does, in Rhode Island loves to just compare ourselves to Massachusetts education a lot of times politically. Right or wrong, we just love to do that. But how do we compare under this statistic? Well, I can't say that part. I was just be interested, like, how do we compare Providence to other districts similar to us when it comes to
the 90% attendance, or
yeah, the attendance for teachers?
Yeah, I would say, and we can share, it was done by the National Center on Teacher Quality 5 or 6 years ago, where they looked at larger districts around the country. And so it was a little, backwards looking, but it was, Providence was in the lower third of that, even the lower quarter. So it wasn't on this exact metric, but it was on teacher attendance. So apples to apples comparison with other government districts, we did trail fairly significantly behind other districts.
So why, in your opinion, is this happening? Why, what can we do to support teachers to make sure that we can increase this attendance?
Yeah, I'd say there are probably some bigger, systematic issues we need to face, and also some more tactical ones. So maybe I'll start with some of the tactical ones. So we mentioned a leave audit that was done. And so one of the things it looks at is, leave, employee leaves can be both based on what your policies are as well as how you implement those policies. So one of the policies that was highlighted was that we do have in the district a large number of options for leave. So I'll give you an example that's come up recently, which is professional development leave. So we know professional development is critically important in the district. We hear that loud and clear in the Johns Hopkins report, which is what allowed us, or kind of why the priority of the superintendent and commissioner been to add professional development days prior to the start of the year. So we invested a significant amount of money to do that in supporting teachers with additional days prior to the start of school. But what we've noticed is people will submit for professional days throughout the school year. I think in many cases, well-intentioned, but not always entirely aligned to some of the outcomes we're looking for here, and often conflicting with when students are in session. So while we want to prioritize professional development, and we do, when you have the option to submit for days off, while people don't think of that as a sick day, it's a day when you're not a student. So there are most discretionary leaves or leaves that Providence has more of than we've seen in other districts. So that's a policy that we have to address. And so there are where we have discretion as a district, we've been trying to prioritize making sure adults are in front of students. And then we need to continue talking with our colleagues at the PTU about how we deal with that. And we did spend time in negotiations talking about that. And so there were some productive conversations there, but I think we would believe there's more work to be done there.
Is there any dispute on this data point? I know that there have been other statistics around teacher absence rates, and I just want to.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
If I could jump in,
yeah,
Mr. Escobar, because that was my question. When you take a look at the tab, right, it says that 87% of the teachers were present 90% of the time for school year 18-19. But when you take a look at what you have here, for the same school year, you have 66% of the teachers present. So I think it's important, and in all fairness to you, Ms. Jackson, I know that you were not here when the original TAP was created. So I'm not going to ask you how the district was able to come up with 87% for that school year. If you have an explanation, we would certainly welcome it. But what I am going to ask you to walk us through is, how did the district calculate for that school year that teachers were present 66% of the time? What was done differently to come up with that number versus the number that was published originally?
The original calculation, it did not exclude absences like sick days or professional days. Our calculation is on the amount of days that teachers are in their classroom in front of their students. We did exclude FMLA, and we did exclude maternity.
So the original calculations didn't include any of that in here. Now we have a more accurate.
If a teacher had 15 sick days and they took all 15 sick days, they could still be counted as being here 90% of the time.
Gotcha. Here's what my issue is. And again, this is not directed at you because you weren't here when the original TAP was published. But I think it's critical that our data is accurate, because it's this type of discrepancy that causes mistrust between the district and our educators. When they look and see the TAP and then they look and see what you have here, there's two separate numbers, and now we're determining that, we took into consideration FMLA, COVID, sicknesses, and all things that are appropriate. But the problem is that we have to be consistent in doing it. And I believe now that we will be consistent when we present this data and when we're sharing it with our colleagues at the PTU, that they're looking at consistent data. Because if I'm a teacher and I'm looking at this, I could see why they would be upset now that we're looking at two different data points and the numbers are vastly different, right? So I hope that as we move forward and the district is producing data, particularly around this, because you can see that it's garnering a lot of discussion, that we are accurate. And it may be even going forward as we continue to talk about this, and I believe the district can do this, where we can get a breakdown in terms of attendance per school, right? Because we look at a school like 360, again, I'm gonna go back to them, we just acknowledged them for having high teacher attendance, and if we're looking at another school that attendance isn't high, what's going on there? Is it climate and culture? What is the issue that's taking place there so we can address it? And again, the solution to this doesn't fall squarely on the shoulders of the school district. The solution to this doesn't fall squarely on the shoulders of our educators. This is a shared problem that we need to address collectively. Now, back in, been on the board for a number of years now, pre-takeover, I'll say, there was this was an issue in the district. Talked about teacher attendance. And I reached out to Mary Beth and I said to her, let's form a working group to look at this. She agreed, she joined me. There were members from the district, HR, we had some principals from schools where attendance was really high, we had some principals from schools that attendance was struggling. We all came together, we were figuring out what the next steps were to increase teacher attendance. We made modest gains. The problem that in hindsight, the issue was that we didn't continue that working group. I reached out to Mary Beth again. And I asked her, would you be willing to restart that working group? Because this is an issue that we need to address. And I can't see us meeting the other metrics in the TAP if teachers are not in the classroom. Her response was yes, she's willing to come to the table with me again and members of the team to look at the root causes around teacher absenteeism and address it once and for all. And this time, we're going to continue that working group. So, Ms. Jackson, I welcome you, I welcome Zach, superintendent, other members from the cabinet to join us, and certainly my colleagues on the board, because this is the work that we need to do to make sure that our students' needs are being met.
Absolutely. We can also share the school by school data with you.
That would be fabulous. I think the board would be very interested in seeing that school by school data in terms of, teachers that are absent. But that's all that I have by way of my questions. I'll open it back up. I think Dr. Santal wants to jump in.
Yeah, just to follow up on the point you just made about getting the data of who the 36, using this measurement for the moment, who the 36% are. Do you have a sense if there's a sort of distribution of them, or in we can break it down by schools, what we're just talked about, but also by seniority, tenured, not tenured, elementary, middle, high, subject matter, et cetera. Do you have that data? Do you see trends that already in that data who is not there 90% of the time? That enables us to sort of target our solutions.
We could certainly get that.
Because I'm assuming it's not sort of randomly or evenly distributed, and maybe it is. I don't know. But I'm assuming
it's a very good question, and we can certainly get that.
Yeah, because I would be curious. But I mean, in particular, whether non-tenured teachers are more, which I tend to doubt, but I don't know, whether non-tenured teachers are more heavily weighted, because at that point we have a little more leverage to change behavior. So just curious about that. I have another question about another page, but I don't want to get us off this page unless someone else.
On that topic as well, do we have any data looking at teacher turnover? How many times does one class go through numerous teachers? Is that appears to be a uncommon story that I've heard, and I don't see that reflected here, but I think that's important to look at, and does reflect, in these student numbers as well. If you don't have a teacher or you have so much changing leadership, how are you expected to show up yourself?
Sure, I mean, we have that information, this is just the one metric in the path that we are aligning to, but we have all the.
And to your knowledge, is that a problem in the district? Is that not a problem? It's a minor problem?
I can't say specifically, how many teachers have moved to one classroom or another, and there's a variety of reasons that could happen. But we can certainly look into that for you.
Yeah, I would love a follow-up on that, thank you.
I did have one more question about this. Is there a reason why calculating it this way is more useful than calculating it in the way that school board president cited in the original TAP? Because, I mean, if teachers are folded into this for taking sick days, they're contractually, they're entitled to those things, right? I mean, those are a form of compensation or deferred compensation. So I don't want to sort of poison the well of our communication with our teachers by assuming there's, some sort of negligence going on in that entire 36%. That's why I'm wondering what that other number is more useful, or at least a first start getting at it. Obviously, this is useful for our negotiating strategy, when we look at the contract. But I guess I'm just curious about that question. If there is an argument for why this is more useful, I'm open to hear it, but I'm just curious.
I mean, I'll start, and Ms. Jackson can add in. I mean, one thing I'd say is, part of the reason to show the data this way is not to point fingers or to say we're, because 36% are good, it's not that. It's from, this is what students experience. So if you were talking to a parent and said, oh, yeah, your teacher was here 90% of the time, they'd say, no, they weren't. Let me count the days, and it's like, well, that day doesn't count, that day doesn't count. I think this is not to say that we think, people need to take time off to recuperate. They need to take off and take their contractual entitlements, but we from the student perspective, that's what students experience is 64%, not 88%.
I mean, that's a fair point. I guess it's just, if we're trying to target our resources and our strategy, it feels like the other number is a sort of a more useful one than this one is. Again, this one, if we think that our contract relative to contracts in other districts are overly generous, quote unquote, in terms of leave processes, I assume the audit would reveal that, then it's that shape how we negotiate the next contract perhaps. But it feels like that other number is more useful in targeting our solutions. I'm open to refutation on that, but that's the way it feels to me.
I don't think the question is on whether they could, they have a day. If someone's sick, they should take this sick day. If they have a sick child, they need to take care of the child. It's not about that. But when we are looking at being in front of the students 90% of the time, and what are the leading indicators to student success, and that is a big deal. When a teacher is not there 20 days, it does have a direct correlation to student achievement. So we can't not look at that either.
No, I'm not saying exclude.
I'm just that is that is one of the biggest factors also impacting student attendance, and our student attendance is at 44% for the 90% as well. So you can see that the metrics are fairly close. So this is raising the votes for everybody and getting everybody in there.
Can we just show both the context, like to your?
Yeah.
I mean, especially during COVID, right? If teachers are taking sick days because they got COVID.
Well, and the other thing, what I've heard from PPU in the past is that we call some of our school buildings, in fact, to help with some of our staff as well. There's no way of looking at it to that number, but I figured, how we can disaggregate. But yeah, both numbers.
So they will numbers, yeah.
Right, and that we reconstitute that working group. We want to make sure we're using both of those numbers to figure out that solution.
Thank you, Dr. Santal. Are there any additional questions with regards to this slide? Certainly, this is one that I think we're going to continue to revisit. And I look forward to collaborating with our friends at the PTU as well as the district to work through this. But are there any additional questions or comments from board members?
I have a question
Sure.
regarding, not about the slide. I believe we got this report yesterday by way of Mr. Thomas. It's a 34-page report, and I would have wanted to get it, sooner. Usually these things also live on the school board website underneath the agenda, which is not, it is not, and I couldn't find it on the Rhode Island Secretary of State website either. So I guess my question to you is because I have some suggestions, where does this report live online where it is accessible to parents, educators, whoever wants it?
We will follow the process, and put it onto the system. I didn't realize it wasn't there, so I apologize for that.
Okay. So my suggestion is this: anything that's related to the turnaround plan, these quarterly reports, all of this work that you're actually doing, that I know you're spending all this time on, and that looks, professional and great and thorough and everything else. Sure, we have questions about, what's being measured and everything else and the significance, but if you're doing this work and you're not putting it out to the public, what's the point? So my suggestion is to dedicate a page on the PPSD website to the turnaround plan, because I just Googled it and the turnaround plan is not posted on the PPSD website, or at least I couldn't find it on first search. And along with that page, also post these quarterly reports. When I go to RIDE's website, there is a page on the turnaround plan that takes you to our plan for PBD kids. And in that website, there is a turnaround plan, but the last quarterly report that's posted there is from September of last year. So you're doing all this great work, but you're not putting it out there to the public, so people assume that you're not doing anything. So my suggestion to you is to do that. Get that our plan for PBD kids page updated. Get PPSD's website to include this somehow. And then, obviously, we would love to be able to review things, at least a couple of days in advance. Usually that happens. So I understand it was, we had a transition, there was probably an oversight, but in general, anything that's related to turnaround plans, if that is our path to success, then we should have it visible and also accessible to people. Visible, accessible, and if you have to translate it, translate it. We have interpreting and translation services. I'm sure that somebody can, do it for us. It's not a big ask for us to do it, but it would mean the world to our community. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Really quick. Also, a traditional way to do it is a lot of people would love if district staff members could actually go and host community events speaking about these topics and issues. You could do it right here, like you guys are doing right now, but like Madam Vice President said, if we could get those out on those websites, so when community members do look at it, because a lot of community members look at the website, they can have access to it. But a traditional way to do it is for people like in the district to go out into the community and host these different topics and events, even sometimes at the parent-teacher conferences or something. Some district members can go there and host that. So.
Are there any additional comments or questions from school board members? Mr. Stevens, I'll just add to what you're saying in terms of engaging the community in a traditional way. Maybe you could collaborate with Mr. Figueroa and assist the district in standing up something like that, where we can have community members learn more about opportunities to join the district.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you all for taking the time to build these presentations, stay late night. We talked a lot about the takeover system, and I have to imagine that it's not necessarily the greatest aspect to be in y'all's shoes to go through either presentations with Senate hearings or city councils or mayors or governors, and then you have a school board, and it's kind of this weird sort of aspect. So I just want to sort of acknowledge that. And I think one of the things for our retreat is, how do we talk about where we're in a more of a collaborative atmosphere with y'all and instead of always kind of like in an oversight. Mind you, we should be in oversight because I think that is an important aspect. There could be blind spots where the school board sees, but sometimes I see sort of information come out and I'm like, oh, that's the first time I heard about it. Like the United Way partnership, great thing. That was the first time I heard about it was on Twitter. I was like, oh my God, I retweeted it. I was like, oh, that's great. You know, but I think there's other aspects that these individuals have within community partnerships that can help the district, that want to help the district. So I just want to acknowledge that maybe that's something we could talk about in the retreat. And I just want to say that I acknowledge that y'all shoes that you're wearing is the toughest right now. I just thank y'all for being committed. And again, like how can we also make sure that there's not that much turnover going on in PPSD that we're seeing. So
Really quick, and also with that would take a lot of pressure off you guys' shoes when we like involve, like what he said, United Way, involving different stakeholders, because now you can say, okay, well, there was other individuals that was privy to this information, so it makes you guys feel a bit more lenient. It definitely will keep in the loop on a lot of those things, but just like Travis said, I really do. I'm a bit of a tough board member, but I do appreciate you guys staying here, doing all the presentations that you guys do, and working tired. My pronunciation, I'm tired, but I do appreciate you guys. I really do.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions, comments from board members?
I just have one question about a different slide.
Sure.
Which is the learning, I forgot the term of art, but it's the one that is talking about a strategy of having 25% more time for, I think it's ELA and math. There it is. Yeah, that's the one. And that makes perfect sense to me. I guess my question is, where does that time come from, given that we're restricted by, state law, CBA, et cetera, about the length of the school day? How do we create that 25% more time on task for those three? Are we taking time away from other disciplines or other parts of the day? How do we accomplish that?
Some of it can be inside the school day, some of it can also be in after-school programming, Saturday academy, summer school. It's a holistic approach to 25% more time. It's also about reading and writing strategies. The English teacher does not have to be the only one to focus on reading and writing. Social studies teachers, that's huge leverage when you're talking about nonfiction, reading and writing. It actually accelerates growth. So, it's not all in the English class, it's also in our science class, when you talk about our math, when you talk about writing labs. When you hold those expectations to the same writing standards that are in the Common Core, that accelerates growth. But it's also in art, in music. Anytime students engage in any kind of event or activity or discussion, they should be writing about it. All of those small pieces add up to 25% more time, but you cannot imagine how much it accelerates growth if it's done consistently.
Yeah, I can see it even at the college level. We've been, I chair a history department, we've been trying to teach writing at the same time that we're teaching history, because otherwise no one is learning history unless they're
The more kids write, the better they read.
Precisely, yeah, totally agree. All right, thank you.
Any additional comments, questions from board members? Okay, I think we are good to go. Ms. Jackson, Mr. Figueroa, Mr. Scott, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is an executive session item. That item has been resolved, so we will not have executive session this evening. That brings us to our final item, which is to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made. Right. Motion's been made emphatically by Mr. Escobar. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Stevens. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yes, I know that.